Stand by, Josh. Jim Acosta, our White House correspondent, is there on the north lawn of the White House. You're getting some more information about what's going on behind you, not too far away in the West Wing of the White House in the Oval Office. What are you learning, Jim?
Right, Wolf. Just part of the color of what we're seeing here, it's not just President Obama and President-elect Trump meeting with one another. It's their key aides. And the White House pool just put out a note a few moments ago. The reporters who are being allowed to witness at least some of this, they're telling us, Wolf, that Dennis McDonough, the White House chief of staff, took Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who was a key aide throughout the entire course of this campaign, for a stroll on the south lawn of the White House, and it's being described as a full stroll of the south lawn of the White House. That's a good walk on the south lawn of the White House, Wolf. And you recall, it's that same stroll that President Obama and Dennis McDonough took time and again. You'll remember right before President Obama decided not to call for a bombing in Syria, airstrikes in Syria, that he and Dennis McDonough took that stroll on the south lawn of the White House, and that was when President Obama revealed to Dennis McDonough that he wasn't going to take that action and call for airstrikes in Syria. So it's interesting, just in some of the color to pass on from here at the White House, that in addition to this historic meeting between the president and the president-elect, that two of the very top aides for both parties here, Dennis McDonough, the chief of staff, and Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who, remember, was involved in debate prep, was involved in just all facets of this campaign, that they were walking and talking as this transition gets going, Wolf.
Jared Kushner, married to Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump's daughter. They've become extremely close. During the campaign, the president-elect deeply relied on Jared Kushner for his advice, his recommendations. He didn't get a lot of public exposure, but behind the scenes, he was very instrumental. That's what all of the aides I spoke to have told us, and I assume you're getting the same information.
That's right, Wolf. And keep in mind, we're talking about all these different names for White House Chief of Staff. I'm assuming Ryan Priebus is very much in that conversation, talking to the sources I'm talking to, Rudy Giuliani and Chris Christie and so on. But this may be somewhat of a family affair, too, in this White House. Donald Trump trusted Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, married to Ivanka Trump, very, very much throughout the course of this campaign, relied on his counsel. And from what we heard from all sources was that Jared Kushner was very instrumental in his father-in-law's campaign, and was a part of. At times, we were getting readouts from sources that it was Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump who were imploring Donald Trump at times to really lower the rhetoric and tone down and act more presidential out on the campaign trail. So it's interesting to see Jared Kushner, and we've been having this conversation about Ryan Priebus and Chris Christie and everybody else about White House Chief of Staff. How interesting would it be if his son-in-law became the Chief of Staff? I don't want to float something out there that may not actually occur, but I think that's just fascinating to see. Also, Dan Scavino was also spotted by the pool reporters. They're gathered on the South Lawn and around the Oval Office, Wolf. Dan Scavino was the social media director for Donald Trump throughout the course of this campaign, was constantly tweeting and Instagramming and so forth pictures of Donald Trump during this campaign. I only mention that because we were talking about not having access, not seeing all these pictures. If Dan Scavino is there, you can rest assured we're going to have lots of pictures. We're going to see lots of these images that we've all been wanting to see.
Very interesting stuff going on, and an excellent insight into what's going on, especially this very important relationship between Donald Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. I want to quickly get John King's reaction to that. It would be extraordinary if he asked his son-in-law to be his White House chief of staff.
Or to be a counselor in some capacity. The jobs change. There's always a chief of staff. There's 2 or 3 deputy chiefs of staff. Then some presidents have what they call a counselor. Dennis McDonough, as you well know, comes out of a national security background, who became the chief of staff. One of the interesting things as Jim goes through that list, Donald Trump has no government or Washington experience. Jared Kushner has no government or Washington experience. I know that one of the things that Ryan Priebus is telling Donald Trump, one of the things Governor Christie and Mayor Giuliani are telling Donald Trump is make sure, yes, keep your outsider brand. Yes, keep the people you trust most closely. But also, let's be smart here and let's look outside our circle. Because remember, Donald Trump ran against the Republican establishment. He ran against the Republican governing establishment, if you will. Ronald Reagan picked Jim Baker, who was a George H.W. Bush guy, to be one of his. This is the challenge for Donald Trump. To keep your outsider brand, keep your outsider perspective. He said he was going to drain the swamp, right, of Washington. You want to keep that commitment, but you also need to bring in some experienced hands. And I think that's what we're going to go through in these 10 weeks as Donald Trump prepares. He's a real estate guy, so it's like we keep looking over our shoulder here, waiting to see the images. He's a real estate guy. This is the most spectacular 18 acres in our country. And it's a complex where you have the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Wolf, you've walked through it many times. We're the vice president, where Mike Pence will take office. He'll meet with Joe Biden later today. He has to fill all these jobs. As he does so, what is the challenge? Does he reach out to Republican governors and bring in healthcare experts and and social programs experts from around the country? Who does he find in Washington? The challenges facing Mr. Trump and his team are fascinating, and he's got you can't fill them all in 10 weeks, but he's got to get about this business very quickly. And the tone he sets and the people he picks will decide. We will judge him in 100 days. We always do. Is that fair to a president? Probably not. But there's always the 100-day test. The decisions he makes today, tomorrow, and in the next 10 weeks are going to define the next 4 years of our lives, and certainly the first year of his presidency.
You mentioned the Eisenhower building, and Julie Nixon is kind of the closest thing I can think of to Ivanka Trump. I mean, Nixon relied on Julie. She came out and gave a statement in the Rose Garden during Watergate, and he also relied on David Eisenhower, Ike's grandson. So there is a similarity there, but Nixon would never have appointed David Eisenhower to a cabinet position. I think there's some anti-nepotism rules in place where you can't.
Well, this isn't a cabinet position. This would be a White House staff.
Yeah.
You don't need to be confirmed by Congress if you're going to be appointed to a White House staff position. But you were mentioning, if I know Donald Trump, and I've known him for a long time, maybe almost 20 years, I'm sure he has mentioned to the president, and we got a great shot of the White House. You go a few blocks down Pennsylvania Avenue, and you know what Donald Trump is telling the president?
You ever want to stay at the Trump International Hotel? I got a room for you.
Got a hotel over
look,
there,
that's
right
one
down the street.
You bring that up, and we bring it up as a joke, but Donald Trump has other huge decisions to make. What does he do with his business? How does he separate himself from his business? His critics will say there are all these conflicts of interest because he has businesses around the world, and he hasn't released his taxes. So the campaign is over, and today we should focus on the pageantry and the peaceful transition of power. But there are layers and layers and layers of decisions, not just staffing a government, but separating himself from Donald Trump, the businessman. He's now the president-elect, and in 10 weeks he's going to be president. This is a very complicated, deep process.
Donald Trump has now been in the White House for more than an hour. We're anxiously awaiting at the end of the meeting with the president in the Oval Office. They're both going to be making statements. We'll have the first images of President Obama, President-elect Trump together. That's what we're standing by for. Bob Cusack is joining us right now. He's the editor of The Hill newspaper, who's very well plugged in. Bob, what are you hearing about appointments? Is it too early to start speculating about cabinet positions, White House chief of staff, other critically important positions?
Oh, it's never too early, Wolf. Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee, has been mentioned, certainly as Secretary of State. And then you have to look at the advisors, Newt Gingrich, Ben Carson, maybe something at HHS, Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie. This is the parlor game of Washington that's going to be going on for quite some time. But as you know, a lot of Republicans, including some in the Trump orbit, were very surprised that he won. So certainly they were working on a transition, but now it goes into overdrive.
The Mike Rogers, a CNN contributor, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who has advised Donald Trump. We hear his name coming up pretty much. Retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, the former head of the director of the national of the Defense Department, the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. We've heard his name come up as well. I assume you have as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are the names. And I do think you need former members like Mike Rogers who know the Washington game, who are experienced in it. And this is not Trump's world. Trump's world is New York and business, and he needs to surround himself with people like Mike Pence. I think Mike Pence is going to play a key liaison role on Capitol Hill. He's respected by fiscal and social conservatives. He has many friends on Capitol Hill. He's media savvy. So he's going to, in order to get his agenda passed, he's going to have better relationships with members of Congress, certainly a better relationships than Barack Obama did, who struggled with certainly Republicans and some Democrats.
Yeah, Mike Pence spent more than a decade as a member of Congress, was a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, is very well plugged in up on Capitol Hill. Now he's the governor of Indiana, but guess what? He's also the vice president-elect of the United States. Everyone stand by. We're awaiting the president and the president-elect. We'll have live coverage coming up, our special coverage, right after this. Welcome back to our special coverage. Once again, we want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. President-elect Donald Trump has now been in the White House for more than an hour, I think an hour and 15 minutes or so. He's in the Oval Office with the President of the United States, President Obama, welcoming the incoming President of the United States. This is their first meeting. The President going through some of the protocol during this critically important and very historic transition process. At the end of their meeting, reporters and camera crews will be allowed into the Oval Office. We're going to have coverage of the first images of these two men and their statements. The President will speak first. You'll see him sitting there in the Oval Office. Right next to him will be Donald Trump. He'll be sitting there. They'll both make statements, have a little conversation. We'll see if they take questions from reporters. Reporters will certainly try to ask them questions. Sometimes the President will simply say, thank you, and aides will whisk those reporters out. John King is with me. We've been in that situation many times when we've gone into the Oval Office to have what they call a photo op, and at the end they say thank you when we're whisked out.
Right, and so let me turn the tables a bit here. You're anchoring, so you're playing traffic cop, but let me take your spot for a second and just ask you, because you did cover the building for a long time. You covered the building at times during the Bill Clinton presidency when we were dealing with balancing the budget, when we were dealing with bombing Iraq when Saddam Hussein violated the no-fly zone, when we were dealing with an impeachment, and hopefully that's in the past and things like that. But this is your reflection just on this moment, and you having from a Democratic president to a Republican president for whom this town and the world has so many questions, because he doesn't fit any box. He doesn't fit the Republican boxes on foreign policy. He doesn't fit the Republican boxes on taxes and spending. He's been outside of the box. You're playing traffic cop. Let's share your thoughts.
It really is amazing, because you think about it. Very few people during the Republican primary process thought he was going to win the Republican presidential nomination. He did. Very few people thought when he was running against Hillary Clinton he would beat her. There were some, not many, who thought he really had a shot, and the world was literally stunned when they found out. When everyone found out, you and I were there at the magic wall. We were looking at all those counties coming in, and all of a sudden it looked increasingly likely that he was going to be elected president. And now he's here, so it's really an extraordinary, historic moment. And I, like you, I feel grateful that we could, as journalists, that we can cover this historic.
To borrow a term from George W. Bush, he's been misunderestimated.
Mr.
Trump has through the entire process, and he's been unpredictable. I think that's the greatest challenge as we watch him fill his team, as we watch him, have the handoff with President Obama, as we watch these two men who so far everybody has said the right things. Donald Trump on election night said the right thing. He knew the country was divided. He knew a lot of people were in shock. He knew some people were in fear, and other people were anxious and uncertain, and he had a very conciliatory message. Hillary Clinton's message, very conciliatory. The president's message, very conciliatory. So everybody's saying the right things. The issue now is people have to get around to doing things. He has to pick his team. Does the Obama team cooperate as fully as the president has asked them to do, in this transition, which is just so critical? Again, as you look back, filling White House jobs, filling the Eisenhower Executive Office building, some of this is the nuts and bolts of government, and some of it today, I think, is just history. Again, we're looking at the Marine outside of the West Wing. Mike Pence has landed in Washington. He's going to meet with Vice President Biden. Some of this, Wolf, is just cool. I don't mean to sound like this, but it is a museum. And so President-elect Trump is in the Oval Office. President-elect Trump is going to go to the map room, I assume. President-elect Trump is going to go to the Roosevelt room. It's an amazing place. When Mike Pence is in the building, I'm sure Joe Biden will show him the Vice President's ceremonial office. There's a desk in there, and the tradition is you pull the desk drawer out when you're leaving on your last day, and the Vice President signs his name. And Dick Cheney brought me in there during the Bush administration, and you look down at these names, and there's Walter Mondale, and you go back in time, through all there's Spiro Agnew, all the names are scribbled in it's just a fascinating moment, and so there's so much history in the place that it's just cool. And then there's the awesome responsibilities that are about to unfold.
Speaking of history, let's bring in the presidential historian Doug Brinkley for some thoughts right now. Once again, I just want to remind viewers, we're awaiting the president and the president-elect for the first images we'll see of them together in the Oval Office and their statements. That's coming up fairly soon. But Doug, I'm anxious to get your thoughts.
Well, Wolf, I'm rethinking about 2008 when Barack Obama won, and he had just hammered on George W. Bush, the Iraq War, the recession, what a failed president he was. And then Barack Obama was in the situation Donald Trump is. He had to go meet George W. Bush, and he respected President Obama. Told me this, how warm both George W. and Laura Bush were to him. And they maintained a friendship all of these years later. In fact, when the African American History Smithsonian Museum opened, the Obamas were more excited to be with the Bushes than anybody else. And it also dawns on me, Wolf, that President Obama now is the leading Democrat. Hillary Clinton's gone, and he's going to be living in Washington, D.C., not very far from the White House when all this is unfolding. So in a way, instead of going to Rancho Mirage in Hawaii, Barack Obama may be the leader of the Democratic Party symbolically, rhetorically, bringing his flock together in the next coming months. I don't think he's going to be able to disappear from the national stage as quickly as he may have thought.
Interesting. Dana, you're getting some new information as well. What are you picking up?
Just a little bit more color about what's going on inside that White House as Donald Trump and Barack Obama meet one-on-one in the Oval Office. Jim was reporting on Dennis McDonough, the White House Chief of Staff, taking a stroll around the South Lawn with Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law and very, very close advisor. Many say that he was one of the people who really helped run his campaign. But also happening right now is the White House, the Obama communications team has been and is informally meeting with Hope Hicks, who has been at Donald Trump's side since it was just the two of them and Corey Lewandowski, basically, and that was the entire Donald Trump campaign. Talk about somebody who did not come from politics. Hope Hicks, who's the spokeswoman and has been for Donald Trump for some time, is one of them. And the thing that I'm thinking about as I'm talking to a source who is telling me that the communications team is also showing Hope Hicks around, saying, this is not just the building, but this is what we learned from our transition, is that Josh Earnest, who has become very visible, he is the White House spokesman. He was Barack Obama's Iowa press secretary in the campaign. He has been with the Obama team that long, and now he's at the podium talking about, national security and everything from there. So you have that experience of him going from the campaign to the administration. And Jen Psaki, who is the communications director, was also one of the original Obama campaign aides, now the communications director at the White House. She was also at the State Department. So the people around Donald Trump are getting that information from people who have done it. And so it's not just the principals, which obviously is the most important thing, the president and the president-elect, but it's the people around them, especially given how much the experience is really lacking in government and in politics for the people in and around Donald Trump.
Fascinating information. Good color as we await the president and the president-elect to make their respective statements. Gloria, you're also getting some information right now on this historic moment. The American people will be watching. Everyone is anxious to hear how President Obama welcomes President-elect Trump, and indeed the whole world will be watching.
Yeah, I was just communicating with somebody who reminded me, who's no longer in the administration, but reminded me how important it was for Michelle Obama to be taken around by Laura Bush, mother to mother, telling her what it was like to raise young children in the White House. And I think that's what started their relationship, actually, was the graciousness that the Bushes showed to the Obamas. And as Doug Brinkley was saying, they have remained friends. And I think it started because of the way the Bushes greeted the Obamas at the White House. And I think clearly something that Melania Trump cares an awful lot about is how she would raise a child under this bubble. The Trumps have always had a bubble around them, of course, but nothing like this. And I think that what Michelle Obama can do and will do for Melania Trump is to let her know, give her a little insight into what it's like to be a mom, to try and make your child's life as normal as possible, and to have kids who grow up there inside that fishbowl. It's not easy. And one thing we know about Michelle Obama is that she has put her kids first. and that she has been able to raise them in a way that allowed them to go to school every day, have their friends come over for sleepovers, and live sort of the semi-normal or as close to normal lives that you can live when your father just happens to be president of the United States. And I think for a mother, it would have kind of a calming effect to let her know that there are ways to kind of work around this if you're trying to raise a young child, as Melania Trump is trying to do, and that was one of the reasons she stayed off the campaign trail. So I think that's an important conversation that's taking place in that building right now. And I think the president made it very clear to everybody inside that White House that they were to do that and that this is what was done for them. And when they came into the White House 8 years ago, they had no clue about what their lives were going to be like. And that's the same thing for those people today. It's hard to wrap your arms around it unless you've been a part of it or a witness to it. And the Trumps coming in there today don't have a lot of experience in government and how it works. I mean, when John McCain was running for president, he'd been in and out of the White House all the time. If Hillary Clinton were the president-elect, she had been in and out of the White House all the time and had lived there as first lady and raised her child there. So this is going to be eye-opening for everyone. And when you talk about Melania Trump, it will be important for her to have that conversation with Michelle Obama.
Certainly will be. Art Dennis, stay with us. John and I, we're now joined by John's Inside Politics team of excellent reporters. We're going to continue our special live coverage from across the street from the White House. We're going to get the first images of the president and the president-elect inside the Oval Office. We'll hear their statements, much more of our special coverage right after this. Welcome back to our special coverage of this historic day in Washington. We're waiting to see the President of the United States and the President-elect of the United States. They shortly will be allowing cameras into the Oval Office. They've been meeting now for more than an hour and a half or so inside the Oval Office. The first time the President Obama, has welcomed the incoming President, the President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, to the White House. We will get statements from both of them, first images from both of them. We'll have extensive live coverage of that coming up, so stand by. The Vice President-elect of the United States, Mike Pence, he's here in Washington. He's up on Capitol Hill. He's getting ready to meet with the leadership there. Later today, about 2 hours or so from now, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Mike Pence will be here at the White House for his meeting with the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. This is a lot of history going on as this transition unfolds. John King has been with me, the anchor, chief national correspondent, the anchor of Inside Politics. And John, you have your excellent Inside Politics team of journalists here. I'm anxious to hear what they have to say.
I'll introduce them, but as we do this is old school Inside Politics, two anchors. So you be Bernie, I'll be Judy. How about that?
Long time ago,
but great times. Great times as we were together at that White House. Let me bring into the conversation Jonathan Martin of the New York Times, Margaret Tell of Bloomberg, Ed O'Keefe of the Washington Post, and CNN's, to my right, CNN's Sarah Murray, who spent a lot of time on the Trump campaign. Let me start with you because of that. Candidate Trump was told halfway through Election Day, based on Republican models, he was likely to just barely lose. He was likely to lose, he was told. Now they surge to victory. He's in this remarkable, majestic place that will be his office in 10 weeks. Have they given any sense yet of, we know he's going to sign executive orders on day one, but what does he want to be the tone, the issue on day one, on day two to get off to a start? Is it going to be lock her up, or is it going to be bipartisan?
I think you've seen them kind of downplaying the sort of lock her up approach at this point. I think that's part of the reason his meetings, both at the White House and on Capitol Hill, as well as Mike Pence's, are going to be so pivotal. I think that one of the things that has gotten lost in all of the madness that is Donald Trump and was a Donald Trump campaign is that he was very focused on wanting to be able to be an effective president. That is one of the reasons he decided to go with Mike Pence, because he wanted someone who could help execute his legislative agenda. It's one of the reasons they're considering Reince Priebus for a chief of staff, because these are people with relationships on the Hill, people who know how to get things done. And so I think part of these conversations will be, how can we get started on an issue where we will have enough agreement to get something done? If you are a new president, you want to be able to go in and put something in front of Congress that, has some weight to it, but also that you're confident is going to pass. And so I think those are the discussions, that's where they're starting.
Margaret, you're not only covered the campaign, but you covered the Obama White House. A fascinating question for me as we watch. The Marine is outside of the West Wing. The president-elect and the president are in that building. Donald Trump was a chief cheerleader for the birther movement. There's personal animosity between these two men. President Obama said he was unprepared to be president. The principals, the guys who've been in politics or the guys who've been in business, like Mr. Trump, that sometimes the water rolls off them. They understand how to turn the corner, but the staffs often hold grudges. The Obama people didn't like the Clinton people for years after that election. I remember the Clinton people, they hired the people who worked for other Democrats in the Bill Clinton presidency. There are always suspicions of grudge matches. Will the Obama team follow to the letter the president's instructions, cooperate fully with these people, even though we know they don't like them and don't trust them?
Those are certainly their instructions right now to date. And I think that at least President Obama's philosophy and his top aides, and they hope that that trickles down, is that Donald Trump has a way of becoming his own worst enemy and getting in his own way, and that they should get out of the way and let him do that. That they do not want their own legacy to be marred by a lack of grace at the end when President Obama attempted to govern with all the incoming at him from a position of grace. Part of this for President Obama is not political, part of it's ideological. As a huge Nelson Mandela admirer in his earlier years, the notion of reconciliation, the idea of kind of outstretching a hand to your enemy is important, but part of it certainly is political. Democratic Party must rebuild. Hillary Clinton and her people, a lot of talented people, have to figure out what to do with themselves now. President Obama has to figure out how to salvage his legacy. And if they muck it up in the final weeks by taking keys off of keyboards and putting T's inside P's and all kinds of stuff like that, it's just not going to be a good situation.
But, John, I think this is going to be harder for the Obama folks than it was for any past administration that was outgoing. If you look at the folks that lost tough races, whether it was the Clinton folks handing off to President Bush in 2000 or Bush to Obama in 2008, you're talking about the transfer of power between traditional politicians, people who were in the arena, politics between the 40-yard lines. This is not that. This is someone who ran a very different campaign from outside of politics. And I think the nature of his appeal so scared the left, including the folks in that White House, that it's going to be difficult for them to pass the baton, on to somebody who they think basically ran as a racial demagogue. That's a tough thing.
And Ed, your newspaper today, let me just hold it up. The Washington Post is part of its great campaign coverage. Across divide, all eyes on Trump. I think that's a very, very fair statement. And we're going to watch him today sitting in the sanctuary of America's democracy, the Oval Office. For the first time, he'll be with President Obama, but he has to be looking around thinking, that's going to be my desk in 10 weeks.
Yeah, and you wonder if he's already literally measuring the drapes as he's in there. This is I think the first time he's ever been in the Oval Office, as far as we can tell. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think picking up on Jonathan's point, too, what's remarkable and what's important to remember is that already I think a lot of the Obama coalition is coming to grips with today. Chuck Schumer, set to be the most powerful Democrat in town, as the Senate Minority Leader at an AFL-CIO meeting earlier today admitted to them, TPP is dead. The Trans-Pacific Partnership has been scrapped. Put away any thought of it being revived, certainly before the president leaves and probably into next year, because it'll be up to President Trump to sort out what to do about global trade. Other groups across the city are sort of starting to come to grips with all that and realizing they have a lot of regrouping to do. Mm-hmm. And I think to Margaret's point, the fact that there's now this huge collection of unemployed Democrats who are going to have to figure out what to do and how to rebuild the party at a time when Republicans, we've all talked to Republicans in the last week who I think were resigned to the fact and preparing for the fact that Trump was going to lose, and now have to totally redraw their plans.
They were not prepared for this.
Yeah, they were not. And I think that will have a lot to do with how they set the tone, because they weren't thinking it was going to happen. And now they realize they are, and they've got the key.
Let me just ask Sarah a quick question, because you covered the Trump campaign from the very beginning, and Governor Christie was in charge of the transition. The last several weeks of that transit, we didn't see Governor Christie. There was speculation: was he really involved in those meetings? We know that the collecting resumes and having a potential cabinet in place, they think about that. John and I have covered these kinds of stories over the years. Have they done that? Do they have that kind of background checks that they need? Have they gone through all the history, tax returns, if you will?
They have done this kind of thing. It's worth pointing out their operation is not as extensive as Romney's was. It's not as large as Romney's was in 2012. They have been doing this. Jeff Sessions has actually taken on a larger role in helping plan this transition as well, because obviously Chris Christie really was sort of navigating the fallout from Bridgegate, and we did see him pull back a little bit on this, although he's still been a key advisor to Donald Trump. They have submitted plans to Donald Trump about how they want to approach these different agencies, what they can do unilaterally, what Donald Trump could do, sort of how he can implement his priorities in the first 100 days. And they have provided him lists of names that they think would be experienced, appropriate political appointees, some within government, some within the private sector, and they have begun doing those background checks. But Donald Trump is a different kind of candidate than Mitt Romney. He did not want to be involved deeply in this transition process before the campaign was over. He wanted to focus on winning the election. And so they are going to have a meeting tomorrow in which he's going to be fully briefed on sort of where this transition planning stands. And so that's also why it's early when we're talking about who's going to fill these cabinet positions, because Trump will look at the lists that the transition staff has prepared, people they have vetted, and he may say, no, I don't want to go this direction, or can you add a couple of these names and start looking into these folks as well?
You can also bet your bottom dollar that A, Mike Pence, and B, later today when President-elect Trump meets with the Senate Majority Leader and the House Speaker, they're going to have suggestions of who he might want to bring in at the high level and at the staff level. And you can trust me, in private conversations, both of them will say, I saw in the paper or I saw online, you're considering this person. Don't do that. That would be a mistake. Those conversations will happen in private. The world is watching this too, and our viewers around the world are watching this. Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, reached out to Donald Trump today, said, congratulations, and Donald Trump said, let's get together as soon as we can. I think that's a fascinating period. Again, he becomes president in 70 days, but the world is watching now, and in these 10 weeks, not just what will be the first priority on Capitol Hill, who will be the Treasury Secretary, who will fill this job, but what will Donald Trump say about NATO allies who saw him in the campaign saying, you should pay more, you should put up more. Maybe we won't get, Article 5 came into question. You had an interview with Donald Trump on our air where you were pressing him on these issues. I mean, how important?
If one NATO ally is attacked, every NATO ally is attacked, and they have responsibilities.
And he seemed overly friendly to most allies, certainly to the Democrats, to Hillary Clinton and President Obama, and to many of the NATO allies around the world, overly friendly, nice, solicitous of Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, saying that Putin and Assad could figure out what to do inside Syria. Just your perspective, I'm interested on how much does Donald Trump need to say before he's president, during this transition period, to try to ease the worries, or at least fill in the blanks, answer some of the questions the world has?
He needs to do that. He needs to reassure the world right now. I'm sure that conversation he had with Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, reassured her that he's going to be responsible. He's going to honor longstanding U.S. commitments. It's appropriate that this conversation took place. Britain, America's arguably, maybe after Canada, #1 ally, certainly in the top 2 or 3 allies of the United States. The history, I think Donald Trump is going to start to appreciate, especially as he's sitting there in the Oval Office right now, the enormity of this responsibility.
We're talking about a presidential transition, but this is an enormous personal transition for Donald Trump, who's never been in elective office. He's never been in government at all, and who has used, again, we were talking about this earlier, and this is not meant disrespectfully. He has a New Yorker personality where he says what he thinks or he tweets what he thinks, and a president of the United States can't do that. I think that's one of the transitions that we're about to go through. Or to what degree does he do it? Remember, President Obama said, I'm keeping my BlackBerry. He wanted to be different after being told you can't do it. Everybody has their personal way, and they bring some stamp to the office. The question is, what do you leave behind, and what do you insist on bringing?
And if nothing else from this campaign, John, Trump proved that the assumptions about politics, the rules about politics that all of us believed in, just don't matter as much anymore, right? The idea of organization being crucial, that data is paramount, that gaffes are fatal, didn't matter. So why do we think that when he's going to that house across the street, that precedent and norms and tradition are going to matter still? I think Trump proved that the pop culture has now basically merged with a frankly dated and overly decorous politics culture. And I think that's what Trump proved in the campaign. And I'm just not sure that we can assume today that he's going to change suddenly when he takes the oath and behave like past presidents have.
I'm told we're about to see the President of the United States and the President-elect of the United States in the Oval Office momentarily. We'll show you their statements. We'll show you what their body language is. Jim Acosta is there on the north lawn of the White House. We're told the pool went in, Jim. They've got the video. We're going to see it very soon. We'll hear what the President has to say and what President-elect Trump has to say. This is historic.
It absolutely is, Wolf, and just getting a few little tidbits of information about what is going on in there. The president-elect, according to one poll note that we're just getting right now, we're seated in the high-backed armchairs at the end of the room, at the end of the Oval Office, as is typical for when the president speaks to world leaders, and that both men spoke briefly. There is no indication here as to whether or not they took questions. We were talking about this earlier, and it sort of goes to Jonathan Martin's point there a little bit. When Donald Trump is asked a question, it is often very difficult for Donald Trump not to answer that question. And so if we saw the president and Donald Trump make some prepared remarks, you're seeing some pictures there right now. There's Jeff Mason, who works here at the White House.
Let me interrupt for a second. We see
we'll get more soon.
A picture that just was posted from Jeff Mason of Reuters inside the Oval Office. These are the first images we're now seeing of the president and the president-elect sitting in front of that fireplace. We've often see it with a president, with a visiting foreign leader. There it is. You see the microphones. You see the camera crews. But go ahead, Jim. I just wanted to point out the picture we're getting of President-elect Trump and President Obama in the Oval Office. But go ahead.
Right. And I'm getting another readout just as we speak. The president said that they had an excellent conversation about domestic and foreign policy, and that the number one priority is creating a smooth transition. These are comments coming from President Obama, and that if Donald Trump is successful, it will be good for America. If he succeeds, the country succeeds. Those are some paraphrased comments from President Obama. We'll obviously have the video shortly. And then Donald Trump said, according to this note, that he has respect for President Obama, that they were supposed to only speak for 10 minutes, but they went on for 90 minutes speaking, and that they look forward to working together in the future, and that he will seek his counsel. Donald Trump apparently said during these comments that he will seek President Obama's counsel when he is president of the United States, and he called President Obama a very fine man. Now, it does not appear, Wolf, from this guidance that any questions the questions were asked, obviously, but questions may not have been answered. They did not take questions, though many people tried, as the pool note that I'm getting right now. Right there, right off the bat, Donald Trump's first meeting in the White House with President Obama in office, he will occupy in short order exercised restraint. And I know, we don't want to put breaking news on the screen. Donald Trump exercises restraint. But in this meeting in the Oval Office with President Obama, who will soon be his predecessor, Donald Trump did not take the bait. Donald Trump did not answer questions in the Oval Office, because I'm sure there are all sorts of questions that we want to ask. He hasn't taken many questions from reporters, Wolf. Keep in mind, for many, many weeks, there was that press conference, very brief press statement that he made in Mexico with Enrique Peña Nieto. He took a couple of questions there. And he's done a couple of quick interviews here and there with local reporters and some national reporters, but he's not had a full-blown press conference in many, many weeks. I think that is fascinating. But just to underline there, Donald Trump saying during these comments that he has respect for the president. He will seek counsel from the president when he is president of the United States. This is a man that at one time he said was not born in the United States. He questioned his legitimacy as president of the United States, but obviously striking a very different tone once inside the Oval Office, Wolf.
Very different tone. We're only seconds away now. The camera crews were inside. They've brought the video to a feed, and we're about, within a few seconds, to see the president welcome the president-elect of the United States to the Oval Office. We'll hear the president speak first, then we'll hear Donald Trump speak, and we just heard from that pool report Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, will express his respect for the president and call him a very fine man. Both of these men certainly right now appreciate the enormity of this historic moment. We see the still picture thanks to Jeff Mason. Here's the video.
Ready? Okay. Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face. And in the meantime, Michelle has had a chance to greet the incoming First Lady, and we had an excellent conversation with her as well, and we want to make sure that they feel welcome as they prepare to make this transition. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Ms. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone in for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the President in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Here's a good rule. Don't answer the questions when they just start.
It's always
yelling.
the last one.
Come on, guys. Yeah, come on, guys. Let's go.
Very good man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, there's the pool. John, you and I have been in there. A very good man. We heard Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, say of the president. Both of them said all the right things as far as trying to create a very smooth transition to Donald Trump's becoming the president on January 20th.
Right. The difficulty will come in doing things and seeing if there is bipartisan cooperation. But to the imagery and the words so far have been pitch perfect on both sides. To Democrats, to Obama supporters around the country who are still in shock. Some would be horrified that Donald Trump is about to be their president. The president not only literally extending his hand and shaking Donald Trump's hand, but talking about their conversation, about their cooperation, about the personal and the political transition that are about to go. That's about to become Donald Trump's home. It has been President Obama's home for 8 years. Mr. Trump, in exchange, saying you're calling the president a very good man. I don't want to spend too much time in the rearview mirror, but the history is he spent a couple of years of his life questioning the legitimacy of this president. So the fact that this is an important image, and people around this country are watching this image, and people around the world are watching this image, and some people are hopeful about the president-elect. Some people are anxious. Some people just have giant question marks. And this is a critically important part of the process. And I think the most reassuring part is the president saying, that he's been encouraged, that the cooperation, that Mr. Trump's team is reaching out to his team, not in a, where's my office, but in a, how do you do your job? How do we build a staff? How does this work? And that's very important for the nuts and bolts of government.
And Sarah, the words are so important right now. And you've covered Donald Trump from the very beginning of his quest for the White House, and he succeeded in that quest. When the president said they had an excellent conversation, his number one priority is creating a smooth transition. He wants to make sure that if this transition is successful, it will be good for America. Those are important words from the president, who is not only speaking to Donald Trump, he's speaking to all of the American people right there, and indeed to the world.
Those are important words, and it just makes me wonder more what they talked about in their 90 minutes privately, especially as we have seen these images last night of people pouring out into the streets and protest in a number of cities. And I wonder if President Obama took this opportunity to impress upon Donald Trump the fact that there are African Americans and Muslims and Latinos and young women who woke up yesterday morning in despair and in fear about what comes next because of Donald Trump's own words, because of calling for a Muslim ban and calling for stop and frisk and saying incredibly insulting and demeaning things about women, and impressed upon him the notion of taking the reins of a fractured country and what you need need to do to try to mend that. That's obviously not something they're going to come out and say in front of the press pool, but it is, an opportunity, and President Obama did it, to just say, we're going to try to make this transition as smooth as possible.
I think.
Hold on one second, because I want to bring in Dana Bash and Gloria Borgia. But Dana, first to you, the words that we heard from Donald Trump, very, very important. I have respect for the president, a very fine man. He's sending a pretty important message to his supporters. We know he got almost 60 million votes.
That's exactly right. It is not just about these two men. It is, as Sarah pointed out so well, it is about the people sort of on each side who are looking to these leaders to help guide them on how to react and how to act now. And the fact that he said, very good man, he almost said it under his breath at the end, as if he wanted to emphasize it in public, but it's almost as if he was telling himself that Obama is a very good man. The other thing that struck me is that Donald Trump said that the two of them have never met. Now, I guess it shouldn't be surprising in some ways, but if you kind of take a step back, and the fact that these two larger-than-life figures, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the two people who have sparred very much so in public, going back to, I think, 2010, have never actually met, and that they do it for the first time in the Oval Office as Barack Obama is welcoming Donald Trump because he will be his successor, to wrap our minds around that, it's kind of hard to do.
Gloria, they may have never met, but they were only about 20 or 30 feet apart at a White House Correspondents Association dinner a few years ago, where the president had some fun at Donald Trump's expense. A lot of us might have remembered that image. But Gloria, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts.
Well, it seems as if we moved from one universe into a completely different universe now. These are, Barack Obama had said that Donald Trump shouldn't get anywhere near the nuclear codes, that had criticized him as dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have Donald Trump, who had been a birther, okay? And now what we're seeing is these two men, for the good of the country, getting together and sending signals to their constituencies that this is going to be okay. And that's an important signal from the Oval Office to the American people. What struck me in particular about what Donald Trump said was that he said at the end of this short presser that he explained, talking about President Obama, he explained some of the really great things that have been achieved under his presidency. So what that made me think of is that the president would, for example, mention Obamacare and say, look, I know there are a lot of things that are wrong with it, but let me implore you to make sure that, let me tell you the things that have worked under Obamacare, that the fact that people with pre-existing conditions can still keep their insurance and so forth. So I think that this conversation may have been a lot more substantive than just a meet and greet. I think President Obama had a few things he needed to say, and to tell Donald Trump about what he has achieved and what Trump needs to keep in mind as he talks about undoing every single thing that he has done over the past 8 years. I think this was the president's moment to say to Donald Trump, I know where you're coming from, but let me just tell you a few things. And I think it sounds like from Donald Trump that the conversation was cordial and respectful, and that Donald Trump listened to what he had to say, and that he comes out of this meeting with what he said was great respect for the president. Donald Trump may have visited the White House socially in the past, but he sure hasn't had a meeting anywhere approaching this one. And I think that it's kind of stunning, as Dana was saying, for these two people to meet face to face for the first time after they have been hurling insults at each other over this last few months. And I think that, I think the American public needed to hear them come out of this with respect to a degree. At least Obama saying it was an excellent meeting, and Donald Trump saying he has respect for President Obama.
I think Gloria, that motorcade we see on the left part of the screen, that's the I could be wrong, but I think it's the vice presidential motorcade, Mike Pence arriving up on Capitol Hill from his meetings with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, among other Republican leaders. Is that the Trump motorcade? I'm just going to correct it. It's the Trump motorcade on the left part of the screen. Getting ready. Oh, they've already arrived up on Capitol Hill. So that's I recognize the Capitol Hill part. Didn't realize Trump was out of there as quickly as he is. But Ed, let's get your thoughts on this as well. So he's now about to meet with Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump. That is Capitol Hill up there.
I think you mentioned earlier that you're simulcasting around the world, and the beauty of CNN is that it airs in foreign ministries and living rooms
embassies,
all over the world and embassies. And I think what this is important really for not only this country but for the world to see is that despite the shock, these two men are able to sit here in a room together, be cordial, shake hands. And we've watched Donald Trump for a year and a half plus. I look at his body language there and think there's a man slightly humbled by his surroundings and beginning to realize the enormity of what's about to befall him. And I just think it's an impressive sight, and one that we need to remember means a lot not only to this country but to the world.
Yeah,
I think, Wolf, the message for folks watching around the world is that America is still America, and we respect elections here and the will of the people, and I think that's on vivid display in the Oval Office. I have one fast observation on just how cordial Trump seemed to President Obama. If you look at Trump's rhetoric in recent years, he seems fairly flexible in his assessments of people. And I think he can be fairly conditional about how he feels about folks. If people are gracious and nice to him, he tends to reward that. If they're critical of him, well, he fires back. So this is not somebody with sort of long-standing grudges or fixed opinions of folks. He's willing to kind of move around depending upon how they treat him.
And that's the silver lining on Capitol Hill, is Donald Trump has taken every position on basically every issue as he heads into the White House. And so as he is prepared to actually govern and delegate these tasks, there are people on the Hill who think that Donald Trump could be a deal maker and would be willing to compromise.
There is an issue of timing also that I think is important to consider, which is this. And President Obama, Hillary Clinton thought that it would be her there today. Tomorrow's Veterans Day. President Obama leaves Monday for a foreign trip, his last scheduled foreign trip, to Greece, to Germany, to Peru, world leaders, major U.S. supporters. President Obama's trip was supposed to be a farewell tour and maybe a last bid at TPP. It is now all about trying to answer the rest of the world's questions. And I suspect, and I hope we'll learn more during the readouts, that some of today's meeting was so that President Obama, in these meetings with Angela Merkel, in these meetings with Western and Asia-Pacific leaders, is to be able to say, I spent an hour and a half with Donald Trump.
And we're going to be covering Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary. He is scheduled to have a briefing momentarily. We're going to have live coverage of that. Once again, history unfolding behind us right here in the nation's capital.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer. It's 1 p.m. here in Washington. Wherever you're watching from around the world, thanks very much for joining us. A remarkable meeting has just concluded at the White House. The president and the president-elect putting aside their animosity from the campaign to fulfill a time-honored tradition here in the United States, the peaceful transfer of power. President Obama welcomed President-elect Trump to the White House this morning. They said they had an excellent discussion. The meeting was supposed to last, at least according to Donald Trump, only 10 minutes, but according to the president-elect, it actually lasted almost an hour and a half. Here's what they said at the end of the meeting.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face. And in the meantime, Michelle has had a chance to greet the incoming First Lady, and we had an excellent conversation with her as well, and we want to make sure that they feel welcome as they prepare to make this transition. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the President in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions.
All right, there you saw it, historic video from the Oval Office in the White House. We should be getting some details on this Obama-Trump meeting during the White House briefing. It's expected to begin shortly. The White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest will go to the lectern over there and brief reporters. Will have live coverage. Presumably, he'll provide some more inside information on what actually happened during that 90-minute meeting between Donald Trump and President Obama. Donald Trump, the president-elect of the United States, and the vice president-elect Mike Pence. They're also meeting with the House Speaker Paul Ryan. Pence meets in the next hour with the vice president of the United States, Joe Biden. They'll be meeting at the White House right behind me. While Trump supporters certainly celebrate his victory, thousands took to the streets last night to protest. Thousands of Americans. Demonstrations actually took place in at least 25 cities. Meanwhile, back here in Washington, this transition process has begun. Our senior White House correspondent Jim Acosta is covering the Trump-Obama meeting for us, and our senior political reporter Manu Raju is covering Trump's meeting and Pence meetings up on Capitol Hill with Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, Mitch McConnell, the Majority Leader in the Senate. Jim, first to you. Contrast the tone, it was pretty dramatic, right, of today's meeting with the very harsh attacks that both the President and now the President-elect, they leveled at each other during that lengthy presidential campaign.
That's right. And going back all the way to 2011, Wolf, you heard Donald Trump say during that meeting that they had never met before, but they have been face-to-face before. Remember back in 2011 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, President Obama mocked Donald Trump to his face about his commitment to birtherism and so on. And that was a moment that it's been said motivated Donald Trump to consider running for president. And it didn't do it in 2012, but he certainly did it in 2016. And now he's the president. To hear those words in the Oval Office that we just heard a few moments ago, Donald Trump referring to President Obama as a very good man, that is a far cry from what we heard during the course of this campaign. Put the birtherism stuff aside. At one point during this campaign, Donald Trump referred to President Obama as the founder of ISIS. And so, you know, this is a huge leap forward in their relationship. And to hear Donald Trump say that he looks forward to talking with President Obama in the future, including seeking his counsel, that is probably something that just about everybody did not expect. But as we've been saying all morning, Wolf, and you said it yourself, these sorts of moments have a way of changing people. The weight of the presidency is something that can change people, and perhaps it's changing Donald Trump as well. But my sense of it is, Wolf, having covered this candidate and now president-elect for the better part of a year, this may just be a timeout in these partisan wars here in Washington. Donald Trump is going to be meeting with the House Speaker Paul Ryan, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in just the next hour or so. And, you know, they have a very ambitious agenda ahead of them. Donald Trump wants to repeal the president's signature legislative achievement, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. I was talking to a senior Democratic aide last night, Wolf, who said that is actually feasible, that even though the Democrats have 48 senators, they may not need that supermajority in the Senate. They could perhaps tear it apart through budget reconciliation, where you just need a simple majority and so on. So, you know, they're going to be hammering some of this stuff out with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell here in short order. We shouldn't expect the whole world to get decided here in the next 24 hours, but they certainly have an ambitious agenda ahead. But no question about it, Wolf, when you look at the past and the kinds of words that were exchanged between Donald Trump and President Obama, this is a huge development that we're seeing today, a major call for unity from both the president and the president-elect, Wolf.
And I assume, and I think everyone assumes that the president had an impact on Donald Trump during that 90-minute meeting in the Oval Office. Stand by. Manu, give us a sense of what to expect during Donald Trump's meeting, which is about to begin with the House Speaker Paul Ryan, because as a lot of our viewers know, there was no great love lost over this lengthy campaign between these two men.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this relationship, Wolf, is going to be essential for Donald Trump going forward, having a good relationship with the House Speaker. And as we know, during this very acrimonious campaign season, Paul Ryan repeatedly criticizing Donald Trump for things that he said on the campaign trail, and at one point last month saying that he could no longer defend Donald Trump. He could not campaign with Donald Trump, and that prompted a retort, sharp retort, and attacks from Donald Trump, calling Paul Ryan a weak and ineffective leader. But since then, they have moved past it. At least Paul Ryan certainly has in the last couple of weeks, trying to push the idea of a unified Republican government, campaigning of sorts for Donald Trump and appearing on the campaign stage with Mike Pence. But they have not met face-to-face yet. Paul Ryan and Donald Trump have not met face-to-face yet for several months. Actually, they had tried to meet once during the campaign season last week, right before the election day, but that didn't pan out because of scheduling conflicts. But nevertheless, the idea here in this meeting is trying to figure out where their agendas align and what issues they can push initially. Jim mentioned about the idea of repealing Obamacare. That's certainly something that is feasible through the budget process. At least significant chunks of that bill could be repealed. The health care law could be repealed, but that could take several months to do, and the idea of replacing Obamacare cannot be done through the budget process. They'll have to get 60 votes in the United States Senate to get something enacted, and that will require bipartisan support. So there are a lot of things that both the Speaker and the White House will have to coordinate over, try to figure out their strategy and their tactics, because they don't want to be misfiring. And that's one reason why, too, that Donald Trump afterwards is meeting with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell afterwards to discuss their plans, and the Senate playing a critical role in deciding which cabinet secretaries they can confirm and which ones will be rejected, and which Supreme Court nominee can be confirmed and rejected in this Senate, something that also would need bipartisan support, presumably. So a lot of issues to go through. This is the beginning of several discussions, but clearly they want to have get off on the right foot after both McConnell and Ryan clearly are just not sure what to expect from this new president, Wolf.
Manu, very quickly, do we know if there are going to be joint statements to reporters in front of the cameras between the president-elect and the Speaker?
We're not getting any sense that that's going to happen at this point. We expect to get readouts from aides from the room, but I'm sure a lot of the details we'll have to figure out on our own. They're trying to present the best face forward, that this is going to be a unified party and they're going to be on the same page. So I expect to hear a lot of kumbaya coming out of this meeting today, Wolf.
All right, we'll presumably get some still photos, at least that. Manu, stand by. We're going to get back to you. I want to bring in our panel. David Catanese, senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report, our chief national correspondent, the Inside Politics anchor, John King, is with us, CNN politics reporter Sarah Murray, our CNN politics executive editor, Mark Preston, is here as well. John, we're moments away from the start of the Josh Earnest briefing at the White House in the White House briefing room. He's going to be providing details. We're going to take live coverage of that. He's going to be walking into the briefing room, and we'll hear presumably some more specific details, what was discussed between the president and the president-elect.
It'll be interesting to see, I suspect not, but it'll be interesting to see if Josh Earnest shares when the president said they talked domestic and foreign policy. How specific? Did they have a conversation about if you decide you want to repeal Obamacare, I would urge you, sir, to not do this or to do it this way? What did they talk about ISIS during the campaign? You know, Donald Trump said we will bomb I'll let you fill in the word, out of them, or we should have seized the oil fields in Iraq. Was there any specific advice? I doubt we'll get much specifics. What we're having today, though, is, Kumbaya, cooperation, conciliation day in Washington after the most divisive and disruptive campaign, certainly in our lifetimes. The Republican nominee was not only at odds with this Democratic president that we see him sitting with, he was at odds with his own leadership throughout this campaign. He doesn't fit the ideological box of the Republican Party. We're not exactly sure how this is going to go forward. It is a very safe bet that it will not stay this happy. It will not stay this conciliatory. There are bumps in the road for every new president. There are bumps in the road for every transition of power. But this is a very important signal to the United States and to the world that after this campaign, when people were questioning, would this work? What is going to happen? The White House is still the White House. The Capitol is still the Capitol. There's still traffic in Washington. Some people are honking their horns and some people are smiling. We don't know what comes next, but the early signals of cooperation, especially that picture in the bottom left of your screen there, the Democratic president sitting next to the Republican president-elect, two men with a deep history of personal animosity between each other, saying, it's time to close that chapter. It's time now for me to help you, sir, prepare to live in this house and to have this awesome job in 10 weeks.
It is pretty enormous, pretty significant right now, what is going on, and we're all so fortunate to have this seat watching it unfold.
It's amazing. As I was walking in here today, I ran into a homeless gentleman on the street, and he came up to me and said, why are people so glum right now? It was, why are they gritting their teeth? Why don't they give Donald Trump a chance? And I thought it was really an interesting thing to say, because if we do walk in the streets of Washington right now, there is this still disbelief of what has happened, the enormity of what has happened. I mean, the only thing I can equate it to, in my short, young lifetime, is what happened in 1994 when Republicans came in a wave and took over the town, right? Now, it's not on the same level, but there was the same kind of feeling. And I think it's really important what we see in those pictures, as John says, that, listen, as a nation, we need to come together. You may not agree with Donald Trump on 70% of what he says, but the fact of the matter is he is the leader of the free world. And not only is he going to deal with domestic issues, but on the foreign policy stage.
And this is one of the interesting things when you talk to people who knew Donald Trump before Donald Trump became a presidential candidate, who worked with him in business, who lobbied for him, and who were supporting him early on and were traditional Republicans, so they were quietly supporting him early in his presidential bid. They groaned and sometimes made public their discontent with Donald Trump when he said things that they felt were inappropriate about women or about Muslims or about Latinos, but they really supported him because they felt like he would be a good president. They felt like he was the kind of guy who could negotiate and who could get deals done and who would work across the aisle. And so for those people, they are now saying, just give it a minute. Let's see what he's like and if he is different as a president than as a candidate. Now, that's going to be a very hard pill for a lot of liberals to swallow. There are a lot of people walking around like zombies in New York and in Washington, D.C. today saying, oh, my God, how did this happen? But, we are seeing this peaceful transition of power. The White House is still standing. And there is, some value to the people who are saying, let's at least give this a chance and see what it's like with the Donald Trump presidency before we all set our hair on fire.
And certainly, David, the president is saying all the right things, the positive things for the good of the country. We've got to work together. Basically, he doesn't say it, but forget about the past. We got to look towards the future right now. And Hillary Clinton said exactly that same thing in her very moving remarks yesterday.
You have to credit both of them sort of rising above it all. I can't imagine standing up there being her, what was sitting in her gut while she said that Donald Trump is the president. You have to accept that. But I just thought it was an exemplary performance for her, given what she has gone through. Now, look, this country is so emotional right now. I keep getting texts from friends all over the country. How's this happen? Is it going to be okay? Why didn't you tell me it was going to happen? Because, frankly, no one thought it was going to happen. And that's why these pictures, while John and everyone's right, the kumbaya is not going to last. There was going to be big legislative battles. But these pictures that are so striking to see Donald Trump sitting next to Barack Obama are so important to try to calm the nerves of the nation.
And for Barack Obama to know his legacy is on the line. I mean, Republicans are going to run this town in January, and so they actually can.
All right, hold on a second. Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, just started speaking. I want to go and listen to hear what he says.
Obama's characterization of it that way.
Well, Josh, I had an opportunity shortly before coming out here to visit briefly with President Obama about the meeting, and there are many details of their discussions that they'll keep between the two of them. A couple of things that I can share with you. Obviously, the president indicated during the pool spray that they had an opportunity to discuss some foreign policy and some domestic issues. Some of those foreign policy issues came up in the context of the president's upcoming trip overseas. The president described to the president-elect some of the issues that he expects to come up with some of our allies and partners and other world leaders that he'll meet with on the trip. And so it was an opportunity for them to talk about some of those issues in advance of the president's trip and in advance of some of the conversations that he expects to have with world leaders on the trip. There also was an opportunity for the two leaders to talk about staffing and organizing a White House. That's complicated business. And any White House is expected to be structured in a way to deal with multiple challenges or even multiple crises at the same time. And the president-elect indicated a lot of interest in understanding the strategy of staffing and organizing a White House. And obviously that's something that President Obama has thought about extensively during his 8 years in office. And they spent a large portion of the meeting discussing the importance of properly staffing up and organizing a White House operation. But look, other than that, what the president heard from the president-elect is a clear commitment to the kind of effective, smooth transition that President Obama has been vowing to preside over for the better part of a year. And the president tends to make good on that promise in the 70 days ahead.
Did the president leave the meeting any more reassured that President-elect Trump will not try to dismantle all of the work that you and your colleagues have done over the last 8 years? And did President Obama make any pitch to Trump, for instance, not to get rid of Obamacare or other significant policies?
Well, listen, I'm not going to get into all the details of their meeting. I think that President Obama came away from the meeting with renewed confidence in the commitment of the president-elect to engage in an effective, smooth transition. That obviously is what President Obama believes serves the American people the best. We are committed to doing what is required on our part to make sure that that happens, and the president was pleased to hear a similar commitment expressed by the president-elect.
Do you know if the president got any reassurances from Trump about whether he plans to pursue what he discussed during the campaign about trying to incarcerate Hillary Clinton?
Well, listen, I'll let President-elect let the president-elect sort of read out his end of the conversation. But as I mentioned yesterday, the president was found reassuring the kind of tone that the president-elect conveyed in his election night remarks. As I mentioned yesterday, these were remarks that the president-elect delivered not just to his supporters in the ballroom, but to the citizens of the country that were tuned in to this historic election, but also to people around the world. And given the intensity of scrutiny of his remarks, it's notable that he chose that kind of tone. I think we saw a similar tone just in the Oval Office 30 minutes ago, where he was indicating his commitment to working closely with the outgoing administration to ensure a smooth, effective transition. It doesn't mean they agree on all the issues. They obviously have deep disagreements. But what they do agree on is a commitment to a smooth and effective transition, and that's a good thing for the country.
Did President-elect Trump talked about looking forward to receiving President Obama's counsel in the future and meeting more times? Do they agree to meet again? Were there something put in place where they're expected to continue the conversation they had today in an additional format?
I'm not aware of any additional meeting that's been scheduled, but I wouldn't rule out future consultations. Obviously, when President Obama served, over the last 8 years, President Obama has benefited from the kinds of conversations that he's been able to have with previous presidents. And I wasn't surprised to hear that President-elect Trump indicated that he feels like he would benefit from those conversations over the course of his presidency as well. Okay, Roberta.
Was it awkward at all, given all the rancor that the two men exchanged versus each other on the campaign trail, and even before that? Was the meeting awkward at all in terms of getting past that? Was there a moment where they had to sort of break the ice and get past that?
Well, to be as specific as possible about this, Roberta, there was no staff in the room when President Obama and President-elect Trump sat down in the Oval Office for 90 minutes. So I think that's probably a question you'd have to ask the two of them. I feel confident in telling you that they did not resolve all their differences. I also feel confident in telling you they didn't try to resolve all their differences. What they sought to do was to lay the foundation for an effective transition from the Obama presidency to the Trump presidency. And this administration, at the direction of President Obama, has been preparing for this moment and this meeting for the better part of a year. And this obviously was an important early step, having the president sit down with the president-elect to discuss that transition. And based on the kind of agreement that was evident about the priority that they both place on a smooth transition, it sounds like the meeting might have been at least a little less awkward than some might have expected.
And you said that it was just the two of them alone. There was no staff in the room.
That's correct.
For the entire time.
That's correct.
And the pool waiting to go into the Oval had seen some other officials, Dennis McDonough, among them on the South Lawn. I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what other officials from the White House may have met with, who was in those sort of discussions or meetings going on at the same time.
I know that the President-elect's spokeswoman, Ms. Hicks, was here. I had an opportunity to meet with her. To meet her, I guess I should say, while the President-elect was meeting with President Obama. You noted that she also had longer meetings with some other members of some of my colleagues in the communications team. You noted that Mr. Kushner was here and had an opportunity to visit with the Chief of Staff. Those are the only two staffers from the President's-elect team that I had an opportunity to meet today. There may have been some others that were with him, but I can't speak to all of the meetings that took place. I will just clarify that there is a more formal process that we would expect would guide the interactions between the President's team and the President-elect's team for the 2 months between now and the inauguration. There will be a formal process for that kind of consultation to ensure a smooth transition. The kinds of conversations today were much more informal in nature.
And President-elect Trump mentioned that he learned about some high-flying assets, and I'm just wondering if you know what he was referring to when he talked about that.
I'm not sure what he was referring to, but you can check with his team on that. Okay, Michelle.
So you're saying, as far as excellent goes, is talking about a smooth transition and having a good tone. I mean, that's all that excellent means in that.
Well, I think when you consider the profound differences between the two gentlemen, when you consider the fact that they've never met before in person, and when you consider the high priority that the president places on a smooth and effective transition, I think that qualifies as excellent.
And I mean, Donald Trump mentioned that this was originally supposed to only last 10 to 15 minutes. Is that true? And why would it go on so much longer than that?
The president had allotted more time on his schedule for that meeting than just 10 to 15 minutes, but they did end up spending about 90 minutes talking about a range of issues, including what I described to Josh earlier. And I think that would be an indication of a pretty robust, valuable meeting.
So yesterday you talked about the president still having deep concerns, obviously, and that everything he said on the campaign trail about Donald Trump was true. Mm-hmm. This meeting, I mean, considering all of that, it was a brief meeting. Did it do anything to assuage any of those deep concerns?
Well, listen, as I mentioned yesterday, the president campaigned vigorously across the country, making a forceful case in favor of the candidate that he supported. And he did that right up to the night before Election Day. But on Election Day, the ballots were counted, and the American people decided. The president was never in a position to choose his successor. The American people chose his successor. The president vowed to work with whomever the American people chose. So, no, they did not recreate some sort of presidential debate in the Oval Office today. They were focused on doing the work of the American people, fulfilling their institutional responsibilities. And on President Obama's part, that means laying the groundwork so that the incoming president-elect can hit the ground running. After all, as President Obama said in the Rose Garden yesterday, we're all rooting for his success when it comes to uniting and leading this country.
So the president still has those deep concerns then, is what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that the forceful case that the president made on the campaign trail leading up to Election Day reflected his authentic views about the stakes of the election and about the candidate that he went all in to support.
And so obviously there was nothing in this meeting that would change any of that.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that the meeting was not convened to try to resolve the variety of concerns that President Obama had raised on the campaign trail. The meeting was focused on the transition, and it went well.
Okay, and Leslie, given that some of Trump's advisors have, just prior to this meeting, talked about looking for all of the ways or wanting a list of all of the ways that they could roll President Obama's policies back starting on day one. Does the president fully expect that to happen?
Well, listen, I'm not going to prejudge what their transition process is. Obviously, our goal is to make sure that the incoming president-elect can hit the ground running and can enjoy success when it comes to uniting and leading the country. That's what the president promised yesterday. Convening a meeting in the Oval Office today is part of making good on that promise. How they choose to use the time and what priorities they choose to set for the earliest days of the Trump presidency is something that you'll have to ask them.
What does the president expect to happen, though?
I think the president's expectation is, is that the incoming president will set his own priorities and pursue them accordingly. And again, our goal is to provide them the kind of advice that would give the president-elect and his team the opportunity to succeed in uniting and leading the country. That's what he has indicated that he has made his priority, and we certainly are prepared to do everything we can over the next 71 days to support him in that effort.
Well, does the president now have any reason to believe that Donald Trump is fit to be president of the United States?
Again, I'm not going to, the two men did not relitigate their differences in the Oval Office, and we talked about them quite a bit in here leading up to the election, and we're on to the next phase now. All right, Justin.
You mentioned the formal process, and so I guess I wanted to ask if there are meetings that have either occurred or been set up with senior staff here at the White House since Donald Trump won the presidency, especially national security or economic teams kind of going forward.
My understanding, Justin, is that the broader formal process has not yet commenced with meetings. There were a number of meetings between White House personnel and members of both candidates' transition teams in the months leading up to the election. And I know there have been a number of consultations with the president-elect's team and the White House team. But the formal meetings, I don't believe have started just yet.
I wanted to ask about, I guess, press access to today.
Mm-hmm.
The meeting with the Vice President and Vice President-elect Pence is close press, which is a break from past precedent. And Carol reported that the Obamas canceled a photo op.
That's not true.
Okay. Can you talk about then why we didn't have a photo op in the way that we have in previous administrations, and why there's no press access, and particularly if this is...
Well, first of all, Justin, you just were in the Oval Office with the President of the United States and the President-elect, so it's not accurate to say that there is no press access. But let's just be clear about what's happened. Over the last 8 years, I've enjoyed the opportunity to have many of you in my office over the years advocating for greater access to the President and the work that he's doing in the Oval Office. And what that typically means is you coming in and advocating for the opportunity to see the President of the United States sitting in the Oval Office, photograph him sitting next to the person that he's meeting with, and then hear from both people about the meeting. That's the priority that has been conveyed to me in countless meetings with all of you over the last 8 years. That is exactly what was provided today. That was not provided in 2008. I wasn't part of designing the press access for 2008, so I can't account for all of the reasons for that. But the press access that we put together today was based on the guidance that we've received from all of you over the last 8 years about what the priority is. And we're pleased to be in a position to provide that today. It is an indication of the commitment that we have to transparency, and it's an indication that the President has to building public confidence in the shared commitment to a smooth and effective transition. What better way for the American public to understand that the President-elect and the outgoing President of the United States share a priority of a smooth and effective transition than to allow you all into the Oval Office to hear them talk about their commitment to that effort.
I mean, one way to demonstrate that you guys are committed to that, I guess, effective transfer of power would be to show the Vice President or show the First Lady welcoming their successors into the White House. And so,
but I think we would all just agree that that would be lower in priority than what was provided today. And what was provided today is unprecedented in terms of the kind of access that was granted to previous White House press corps. So look, there's always going to be this back and forth, as I've stated before.
The reason that this is relevant, and the reason that I'm asking the question is, while the President has come out and sort of put on a cherry face, we know obviously many people here are disappointed. First Lady spoke passionately about how she found Donald Trump to be an unacceptable choice. So are we to read anything, or even putting aside whether we should read anything, is the reason that there wasn't press access to either of those events because the First Lady or the Vice President didn't want to be photographed or appear alongside?
Absolutely not. In fact, I'm not aware that the First Lady's office was consulted about the press arrangements for today. I certainly didn't consult with them. What we can do is we can go back to the White House photographer and see if there are any photos from the greet so that you all can get some insight into how that went. So we'll follow up with you on that.
Last one. Number of foreign governments from top allies of the United States, Turkey, the United Kingdom, Canada, Mexico have all said that their leaders have been in communication with President-elect Trump over the last 24 or 48 hours. Beyond sort of congratulatory calls, is there concern among you guys as you're trying to pursue your foreign policy agenda over the next 2 months while the President is in power that allies could be getting mixed messages on the United States' foreign policy goals?
I'm not aware of any concern about that. It is not uncommon for countries that have important relationships with the United States for them to call and offer their congratulations to the President-elect. Some of those conversations are facilitated by the State Department. In other cases, you've got foreign governments that are going directly to the President-elect's office, and that's consistent with past practice, and I'm confident that happened in 2008 after President Obama's election as well. Okay, Olivier.
Thanks, Josh. First, I'm kind of curious about the President as HR professional. Does he say you need to get a great chief of staff? Does he say there's this one job you've never ever heard of, but it's vital? How does that, or is it just, obviously Donald Trump knows he's got a staff at the White House. So how much precision is the President offering in his recommendation?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't have a detailed conversation with President Obama about this, but knowing how he has approached these issues himself, I think that he has built an organization at the White House with an eye toward surrounding himself with capable people and putting them in positions where they are given the authority that they need to make decisions. Also, he's ensured that they are given the authority that they need to elevate decisions to him if they need to be. So structuring the organizational chart effectively is not an insignificant matter when you're talking about life and death decisions that have to be made on a regular basis in this building. The president will be taking some questions over the course of the next week, and maybe somebody can see greater insight from him on that.
And then looking overseas to the operations against the Islamic State, the president recently sent 1,700 more American troops there. You've long insisted that they don't have a combat mission. These are combat troops. Why did they go? And I mean, are you saying that they needed 1,700 more American troops worth of advice and assistance? I mean, we're starting to see some social media of Americans who look like They are in frontline operations, not in supportive ones.
Yeah. Olivier, what we've made clear is that our service members, when they go to Iraq, they are trained for combat, they are equipped for combat because they need to defend themselves in a dangerous country. But they are not given a combat mission. And that is an important distinction because the president does not believe that American troops should be in a situation in which they are expected to be at the tip of the spear to go and take and hold ground. The idea of the U.S. military being an occupying force in Iraq is not one that has yielded success for our country. It's not made our country safer. So what the president envisioned and the mission that they have been given is a dangerous one. It's one that in which American service members are asked to assume great risk so that they can be in a position to, in some cases, train Iraqi security forces. In other cases, so that they can offer advice and assistance as Iraqi security forces undertake important military objectives. There are even some situations where if some of those trainers or advisors end up in a dangerous position, then there are additional U.S. forces that are mobilized to get them out. This is dangerous work, and this does put them in harm's way, and it does put them in a situation where occasionally they have to use their combat training and their combat equipment to defend themselves. But that is much different than being in a situation in which they are asked to take and hold territory. That's a different strategy, and it's a different mission. Both of them are dangerous. Both of them require courage and professionalism and skill and sacrifice. And that's what we have seen from our men and women in uniform.
I take your point about occupying, but the kinds of troops you're sending.
All right, there he is, Josh Earnest. He was providing us some details on the meeting, the historic 90-minute meeting in the Oval Office between the President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, and the President of the United States, Barack Obama. The President invited Donald Trump for this meeting to start this formal transition. Donald Trump will become the President of the United States in 10 weeks on January 20th of 2017, Inauguration Day. That's when he's sworn in as President of the United States. The President, by the way, said it was an excellent meeting. Donald Trump called President Obama a very good man, and we just heard Josh Earnest say that the President was deeply relieved, very happy, if you will, that Donald Trump, he got a renewed confidence from Donald Trump that there would be a commitment to a smooth transition. And Donald Trump called President Obama, once again, a very, very good man. Very different words than we heard clearly during the campaign. I want to bring in our panel. Our chief political analyst, Gloria Borger, is here with me. We're right in front of the White House. Our CNN Politics executive editor, Mark Preston, is here, and our chief political correspondent, Dana Bash. The renewed confidence that the president has that Donald Trump has a commitment to a smooth transition. Both of these men are very upbeat, very positive. They've been saying all the right things since Donald Trump stunned all of us, stunned the world by winning the presidency.
Yeah, and I think they both are grasping the moment in history that this is. And the fact that two men sit together who don't like each other is not new. I was communicating with Mike Duffy, who is a friend of mine and a co-author of the book, The President's Club. And he was pointing out to me that this is sort of the quintessential club moment here, because Truman didn't like Ike. He helped him anyway. And Ike Eisenhower didn't like JFK, welcomed him into the White House. And, of course, LBJ didn't like Richard Nixon much and did the same thing. So each of these men understands, and once you've been a president, you're initiated into the club, that it is your time to help the next person who's going to join that club understand the surroundings, understand the enormity of it, which I think hits you the minute you walk in that door of the Oval Office, probably. But this is something we have seen in our history, and if it worked any other way, that would be what would be sort of discombobulating to the nation about it. We are lucky enough to have this kind of smooth transition of power. I don't think it means that these guys really like each other any more than they did yesterday, but I do think they understand the responsibilities that the office brings with it.
And, you know, Dana, it was a 90-minute meeting in the Oval Office without any aides, just the two of them. one-on-one.
Right, and I agree that there's no reason to think that they're going to, that they were going to end that singing "Kumbaya" and be best friends. But the fact that they had never actually met,
I know.
Right. They were in rooms together like the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but they've never met and have had such strong opinions about one another. It's almost as if the only thing that each of them knew was the other's caricature. And now, just in that intimate setting, in such a monumental setting like the Oval Office, they got to know each other's character. And that says a lot. That says a lot. And you know what? Listen, we've all been in this town for a while covering politicians, and we know, just even in Congress in particular, they scream at each other, they call each other names, they fight over very real political and philosophical differences, but they all, get together, not as much as they used to, but they can have friendships across the aisle. And this is a very, very extreme version of reminding everybody that these are two human beings, but also two people who represent things way bigger than themselves.
I want to just point out the pictures we're seeing in the upper left-hand part of your screen. That's the motorcade, Donald Trump's motorcade. After leaving the White House, they drove up to Capitol Hill, and Donald Trump is meeting right now with Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House. He'll be meeting with Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, as well. As important as the meeting with the President is, and that's probably the most important meeting of the day. These are also important meetings, Mark,
Can I just add one thing? What I thought was just in terms of the symbolism of all this, of course, he went to the Oval Office. The picture there where that motorcade is, that's outside the Republican National Committee or the Capitol Hill Club where they're meeting. So he's not on Capitol Hill meeting with Paul Ryan in the Speaker's office. They decided to meet on neutral ground, which I think is interesting.
Why is that? Why would they do that? I mean, we've all been to the Republican National Committee headquarters where they're meeting right now. The whole area is called Capitol Hill.
It is.
As we know, but it's not part of the official government part.
And most importantly, he's the Speaker of the House. He's got some pretty nice digs on Capitol Hill. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I mean, this view is nice. His view is pretty nice, too.
He outlooks the whole mall.
Exactly. So, I don't know the reason why they're not doing it there, but I just think it's interesting that they decided to meet on neutral ground, which is exactly where they met the very first time they met after Donald Trump became the presumptive nominee.
But Pence is going to Capitol Hill. Mike Pence, and that's familiar turf for him, unlike Donald Trump and the White House.
Pence spent 10 years as a member of Congress.
I symbolically, these pictures are they're so important, not only here in the United States where we saw the protests last night. I'm sure we'll see them tonight, and we'll see them in the coming days. And quite frankly, again, we'll be talking a lot about this, but on a global scale right now, how important that is. But the reality of actually governing in town, these meetings are really going to matter right now. So there's the campaign rhetoric that we saw Donald Trump talk about on the campaign, and very volatile and what have you. And then there's the fact that there's the governing reality, and can you work with Capitol Hill? Can you work with your own party? Can you work with Democrats? And there are going to be some major clashes. The Obamacare fight, right when he is elected president or sworn in, rather, that is going to be major. And I think we're going to see this country even more divided at that point. But the fact is that he is the president, and they've got to give him the respect of the office.
What struck me, though, about what Donald Trump said, and I wonder how this is going to play with his base, was that he said that the president explained to him some of the really great things that he has achieved. We haven't heard Donald Trump talk about the really great things that Barack Obama has achieved over this campaign.
Or any one thing.
Or any one thing.
Right.
So I'm wondering what they were talking about. My guess is maybe the president was talking to him a little bit about some of the issues with Obamacare that the American public might not want to lose.
Right.
Keeping pre-existing conditions covered, for example. But what were those really great things that Donald Trump heard?
We'll find out soon enough. And remember, that was then, this is now.
Right.
It's a whole new environment, given the enormity of what's going on. Coming up, this historic day in Washington as President-elect Donald Trump meets with President Obama and the House Speaker Paul Ryan. He'll also be meeting soon with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell up on Capitol Hill. We'll have all the very latest developments. Stay with us. The breaking news continues. During the campaign, President Obama called Donald Trump unqualified. Donald Trump, during the campaign, called the president incompetent. But that was then. This is now. Today, they clearly have moved past that bitter presidential campaign to begin the transition of power. Let's bring back our panel. Dana, today the President-elect Donald Trump, he called President Obama a very good man. President Obama said, my number one priority in the next 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. And Donald Trump said, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you. I look forward to being with you many, many more times. They spoke alone in the Oval Office for 90 minutes.
And the fact that Donald Trump said it was supposed to be like 10 minutes, it went 90 and it could have gone much longer. I'm sure the president had a lot of words of wisdom and advice to impart, both on process and on policy. But Donald Trump, if I were in Donald Trump's shoes, I mean, I would want to just sit there for hours and hours. I mean, where do you even start on the questions to ask about how that job works? Right. He knows how to run a business. He knows how to be a CEO. He knows how to be a reality star, and now he knows how to be a candidate. But running the biggest, economy and government.
You see down at the motorcade now leaving the Republican National Committee headquarters up on Capitol Hill. That's Donald Trump's motorcade. It looks like they were there. He left the White House at around 12:45 or so. It's now 1:51 here on the East Coast, so at least more than an hour they had. That was the meeting between Donald Trump, the president-elect, and the Speaker, Paul Ryan.
Which is probably as important, if not more important, than the one that happened in that building. But go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, isn't it the irony of it is a week ago we were talking about how Donald Trump was not going to embrace a smooth transition of power and how the system was rigged and how he wasn't going to embrace it and we were going to have pitchforks. But he won. And look, we have this smooth transition of power, or at least we do now. And look, I think for all the anger, angst, frustration out there from those who lost, the bottom line is this is our democracy and this is how it works. And he won. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Now you understand why.
By the way, that motorcade, we're now being told, included not only Donald Trump, the president-elect, but the vice president-elect, Mike Pence, a former member of Congress, and the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. They're leaving the RNC building, heading over to Capitol Hill to the U.S. Congress itself.
Now we understand why presidents become such ardent students of history if they weren't before they get into the White House. Because to your point, Dana, what they want to do is learn how other people did it and how other people coped with the crises that will inevitably come their way, and how other people organize their White House and the pitfalls of the presidency and the difficulty of living in that bubble.
And the loneliness.
And the loneliness of the job. And, these are two men, so I'm not so sure they discuss the feelings part of it. But but maybe Melania and Michelle Obama did. But there is a part of that job that is so alone and difficult. And, as David Axelrod always says, that the president says, the decisions that get to his desk because they're impossible. And so the difficulties that face you from the minute you wake up in the morning and you get that national security briefing about the threats against this country to the time you go upstairs, you're always working. And I think that you just saw in Donald Trump's face today, if you can read anything into it, that when he said, I have great respect for him, because I think the president opened a window for him onto what his life is like every single day from when you get that briefing at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Two things, just kind of an aside, but very important. One is we're going to have a young boy in the White House now. We had two young girls for the last 8 years.
You mean Barron?
Barron Trump, who we haven't seen on the campaign trail, but really
Donald Trump's son.
Donald Trump's son,
10 years old.
who was 10 years old, standing next to him on that stage, looking so uncomfortable, out of the spotlight, and you could feel for that kid.
Have we had a young boy since John?
I
I'm
know.
trying to remember. It's been all girls,
right? So that in itself is going to be interesting.
So it'll be easier with the boys.
Right. Or not so much. But you know what? What books are Donald Trump going to be reading now? What historians is he going to try to meet with, to your point, Gloria, to find out how other people dealt with crises and learn a little bit more about the history? That will be telling.
And Michelle, as we were talking about earlier this morning, Michelle Obama is so important to tell Melania what it's like to be a mom and try and raise your kids with any kind of normal life in the White House. And I think
she's done a very good job.
Well, she has, and so did Hillary Clinton with her daughter. But it is. It is tough. It is very, very difficult, and I think that would be a concern of any.
All right, we're looking at live pictures. You see Paul Ryan arriving, Donald Trump arriving. You see Mike Pence arriving. They're in the Congress, the U.S. On Capitol Hill right now. They've just walked in. Dana, you're familiar.
Yeah,
with
I was
that
just going to say. Well,
Yeah.
we talked about the fact that he's got nice digs. Well, that's the Speaker's office, and so Donald Trump is about to see the majesty of the House Speakers. It's not just an office; it's a whole suite. It's that whole part of the the whole wing. Thank you of the Capitol, which overlooks the mall.
And let's not forget, Mike Pence, as Vice President of the United States, will be President of the U.S. Senate,
President
like Joe
of the U.S.
Biden.
Senate, and he was a former member of the House Republican leadership, so he knows his way around there.
And Mike Pence will have an office right off of the Senate floor.
Yep.
We'll be right there. And look, I expect that he'll be spending a lot of time up there.
You know, in many ways, Mike Pence Mike Pence might have the job that Joe Biden had, which is being the emissary to Capitol Hill. Makes an awful lot of sense.
Can I just say, just the picture we're looking at, Mark Preston and I, when we were kids, spent a lot of time in that hallway, the Ohio
So
Clark
did I,
corridor.
by the way.
And you.
When I was a kid. Well,
but
not that
to
long.
the left of there is the Senate floor, and right around the corner is where the Vice President's office is.
Right.
And it's just, and you look at it, and it looks so majestic. It's not a very large space, so you could. You run into, the great thing about covering Capitol Hill is you run into everybody all the time in the hallway, and it's very accessible, unlike the White House, in which you have to get behind guards to get anywhere. And I think Mike Pence is on familiar turf, and he will have the role Biden had, I believe.
Right.
It's been really these past few hours extremely important to the country to see the President of the United States, the President-elect of the United States, now the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, the Vice President-elect of the United States, who's, by the way, in about a half an hour, Mike Pence is going to be meeting behind us at the White House with Joe Biden, the Vice President. I'm sure they'll have a lot to discuss about being Vice President and being potentially President of the Senate itself. It's been a very, very important day. We're going to continue CNN's special coverage nonstop. That's it for me. I'll be back 5 p.m. Eastern in the Situation Room for our international viewers. Amanpour is coming up next. For our viewers in North America, Brooke Baldwin will continue our special coverage right after a very quick break.
Fair and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public, and that's what we want to do, and that's why we're excited.
Thank you. How does it feel to be in D.C.? How does it feel to be in Washington the first day as president-elect? Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
We're wrapped up. Guys, the pool, let's head out. Come on. Thank you very much. Tight pool. Out this way, guys.
You've been looking at pictures here down on Capitol Hill. First, the White House here was abuzz, of course, with Donald Trump meeting with President Obama, and we'll get there in just a second. But and I'm Brooke Baldwin. Thank you so much for being with me on this, yet again, another historic day here in our nation's capital. Let me just bring in my panel, and we'll parse through what we just saw quickly. Douglas Brinkley, Dana Bash, David Chalian, and Martha Joint Kumar. Dana, that was your home away from home for many, many years down on Capitol Hill. And to see, and we'll throw the photo back up if we can, or the video. You had Melania Trump, Donald Trump, Speaker Ryan, and Mike Pence. And what I could make out was we'll work together. So again, these messages of unity.
I just remember Paul Ryan being in a press briefing with Paul Ryan towards the beginning of the presidential primary season, and he was making it abundantly clear, without saying it, that he didn't think there was a snowball's chance in where that this moment would ever happen.
Well, we're staring at it.
And it happened. So here we are. And I think, look, I've been trying to sort of think about the way politics works, think about the moment, and, been trying to sort of approach this in a very much a glass half full way, in that in Paul Ryan and Donald Trump, you have a policy wonk and a deal maker. And there's nothing that Paul Ryan likes more than to dig into tax reform, than to dig into, budget reform. Then he has a past of digging into immigration reform and wanting immigration reform. And then you have Donald Trump, who wants to be successful.
Right.
I mean, getting the presidency was just the beginning of the prize, but he wants to do it right. And he actually made that clear a lot on the stump. It got lost in a lot of the Trumpisms that we heard throughout the primary and the general election. But he made it very clear he wants to do it right if he gets in. And so I think that they're a very unlikely partnership, but could be a successful one if they approach it that way.
I was thinking about the same thing, how he is such a policy wonk, and how you saw Speaker Ryan not too long ago standing in front of reporters with, papers and stacks, and I'm thinking, well, that's not necessarily the Donald Trump that we know.
You haven't been briefed unless you had a PowerPoint from Paul Ryan.
I missed that.
I'll just say, just stepping back and looking, these images that are coming into us from Capitol Hill, there you see the President and Donald Trump earlier today. These last 36 hours, it's been kind of amazing to me. For a campaign season that never followed the script, the last 36 hours have all been on script.
So true.
Starting with Donald Trump's victory speech and the gracious notes he made about Hillary Clinton's concession and the desire to bring the country together, followed by Hillary Clinton's concession speech yesterday morning, followed by President Obama's remarks in the Rose Garden to really try to bring the country together. And to this day today in Washington of the very...
Actually, let me jump in. Let's see if we can eavesdrop.
Oh, wow.
2x4 down there. That is just great. So this is the amphitheater that's going to have Congress, Joint Chiefs, Supreme Court, all sitting in these bleachers. And then that platform down there with a 2x4 railing, there you will be sworn in. And this white amphitheater this is basically the and then this is a whole lot colder than this today. Yeah, that's it right there. That's supposed to be receptive to and so the trees by that's the Treasury Department, the trees in the White House. So the White House is straight in Pennsylvania here. Those trees are to your point.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey guys, let's head on out.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You just can't. It's like photo after photo after photo. And, to see the president-elect and the first lady-to-be, showing them the lay of the land down the road.
And that's called the Speaker's balcony because it's the Speaker's balcony. And
one of the best views in Washington.
One of the best views in Washington, almost as good as this. And John Boehner, obviously Paul Ryan's predecessor, it was his favorite thing to do. No matter who came, he would take them out and look at it.
I remember seeing Speaker Boehner and the Pope. Isn't that?
Exactly. There you have it again. And obviously Paul Ryan has the same feeling about it. And he's literally giving him a lay of the land. I mean, he's not figuratively, literally giving him a lay of the land. Couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, but what they're doing is they're pointing straight up Pennsylvania Avenue.
Hey, there's my hotel.
To this, right. I was just going to say, and in between where they are and this behind us, the White House, is the Trump Hotel.
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we also see there is the inaugural platform starting to be built.
It's already
on that side of the Capitol.
Maybe that's
and
the
I believe,
banging.
I believe what Speaker Ryan is also showing the Trumps is where he's going to take the oath of office and become president.
You are correct, sir.
And I'll just in terms of, I'm sure you're exactly right, as usual, David, but underneath where they are, just in terms of the geography of the Capitol, about 2 floors down is exactly where the president-elect walks out to the stanchion. Yeah, you can see they are building it there to the stanchion where he is sworn in, and it's right down there. They walk through the crypt and then out the door. And I actually sometimes, I'm going to dork out right now.
Totally sneak out there and look.
Yeah, well, just also to take the walk that the president takes and to walk around the crypt and to walk out that door and to see what he sees at the day of the inaugural is really cool.
70 days away? Ish.
Right?
Ish. Douglas Brinkley, you're watching all of this with us. As a historian, you are watching history unfold. What strikes you about all this photo here?
The amount of civility that's being seen today in Washington, and it's sorely needed
country's feeling very divided. I think Donald Trump's really on a listening tour. I hope in the coming days he might meet with Congressman John Lewis. Lewis famously was beaten during the Freedom Rides and marched to Selma. And in recent years with his group called Politics and Faith, he met and hugged the people that actually beat him. John Lewis. He's a moral symbol on Capitol Hill. It would behoove Donald Trump to meet with him, perhaps have a meeting down the line with Bernie Sanders, talk to him about some issues, just listen some. And I think Donald Trump's doing that today. And President Obama is going to go out with very high marks. He's at a 55% approval rating. By the time of the Trump inaugural, he'll be at about 60% approval rating. And because he's showing us what a class act he is today, the transition to power is essential, and we're watching it happen in its first phases today.
We just heard from President Obama talking not 24 hours ago about how smooth and professional the transition was, right, from Bush 43 and then on to him, and the proverbial passing of the baton. And then, of course, let's take a couple steps back. In the historic moment, we saw the president and president-elect sitting in the Oval Office in the West Wing earlier this morning. Let's listen to that conversation.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together, to deal with the many challenges that we face. And in the meantime, Michelle has had a chance to greet the incoming First Lady, and we had an excellent conversation with her as well. And we want to make sure that they feel welcome as they prepare to make this transition. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone in for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not going to be taking any questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Here's a good rule. Don't answer questions when they just start. It's always the last one. Come on, guys.
Little piece of advice there between the president and the president-elect. I mean, these are wow moments. These are moments when words and tone and body language matter. Martha, let me bring your voice into this conversation, because all this talk of transitions, you were in charge of that transition between Bush 43 and President Obama 8 years ago. When you look at those pictures, when you listen to the words, the meeting was supposed to last 15 minutes. It lasted for an hour and a half. Do you feel hopeful?
I do, and I thought they discussed a broad range of things.
They discussed foreign policy issues, which is a very traditional thing for a president to do, to transition himself, as Bush did to President Obama. But I noticed he also talked about the White House staff. And setting up your White House staff early is particularly important because that's your decision-making structure. And you want to make sure that in all the decisions you make that you have the kinds of information that you want, but also the kinds of information you need, which may involve hearing from a lot of other maybe outside groups, but also government departments that have information that might be relevant to the decisions you're making in terms of appointments. And so you want to have a White House structure in place, and it's not easy because while you have an opportunity at the very beginning of the administration to reorganize a White House, a better opportunity than you have later on. At the same time, you don't have people that have the experience and knowledge of being in a White House and how it should be organized. So
let me just jump in and interrupt everyone. That's Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Let's dip in. Can we listen? We're just walking past.
Well, we attempted a question, Tommy.
Forgive me, we're juggling. This is how live TV works. We'll stay on these pictures and see if they walk up to any microphones. Go ahead, Dana.
So they're walking, obviously, around that corner there. Behind where you're seeing is the Senate chamber, and they're walking actually towards the House side, but that's where Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader's office, is. It's right there. So the President-elect went from the Speaker's balcony underneath and up and around so that he could get, a little bit of a tour there. And you do see that Mike Pence is there. I wonder if when they came up, they took a peek into what Mike Pence's office will be, because he is going to be the president of the Senate, which has an office right near where they're standing.
Have we seen anything like this before? A president-elect being walked around the sort of central grounds of Washington? Or is it just because he's never held office, he just isn't familiar?
Well, I think we've seen these pictures before. A president-elect meeting with the congressional leadership that they will be working with when they come president. I was just wondering, though, I don't know if we've seen the incoming First Lady partake in these meetings. I was, as you just said that, Brooke, I was trying to rack my brain to remember if I saw Michelle Obama or Laura Bush join their president-elect husbands in these meetings with congressional leaders. I don't know if you recall, Dana.
I don't think so, but I don't know for sure. But I think, to your point, in recent history, at least, obviously President Obama was a sitting senator, so he didn't exactly need a tour of the Senate. And most people are creatures of Washington or politics that know that. So, yes, this is ceremonial, symbolic, but for Donald Trump, it's also like, oh, this is where the Senate is, and that's where my office is, things that other people just know coming in.
I think this is all just incredibly, forgive me, I'm almost speechless just listening to all of this. Manu Raju, this is your home away from home, Capitol Hill. What do you know about these meetings and how they're going? Manu, can you hear me? It's Brooke. You're live on CNN.
Hey, Brooke. We're still getting details of that meeting. It looked like that it went reasonably well, just judging by the body language. You saw pictures of Donald Trump going out into the Speaker's balcony, getting a little tour of the Speaker's balcony. In fact, we did not get any guidance ahead of time that was actually happening. So you would have to presume if this meeting was going poorly that would not happen. But as we know, going into this meeting, the two men wanted to discuss areas in which they could work together, which they could hit the ground running, and where their agendas align. One of the things that Republican leaders thought about going into this meeting is exactly what does Donald Trump want to do. He pushed a lot of issues that were very controversial and divisive on the campaign trail, like building a wall with the border in U.S. and Mexico. If he came out pushing that could be something that could prompt a war within his own party and certainly among Democrats as well. So I expected you could hear going in that Paul Ryan wants to push things that could unite the Republican Party, some ideas that could presumably get Democratic support, like an infrastructure bill. And you can bet that they discussed how exactly to go about their shared goal about repealing Obamacare. Now, Brooke, that is something that they could do, take a significant chunk out of the Obamacare law through the budget process, but that could take several months to get accomplished. But they don't really have anything to replace it with yet, at least not anything specifically detailed in legislation. They have some broad policy ideas. So presumably they talked about that, how to deal with Obamacare. And as you just saw right now, Donald Trump walking with the next person on his meeting list, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, heading into his meeting as well. So important for their decision-making going forward about how to deal with this slew of cabinet appointments that the Senate has to take up very soon into the new administration, as well as what to do about that Supreme Court justice. Mitch McConnell said he was going to give some suggestions to Donald Trump about who he could select for that 9th Supreme Court slot. So you can expect that to come up a lot. But McConnell, too, Brooke, does not necessarily want Donald Trump to do things that are divisive and that could divide the Republican Party. They want to show some unity right out of the gate, which is one reason why they're having these meetings today, Brooke.
Listening to you on unity, also just on how he's listening, a quick note, and I think, Dana, this is about what you were going to say about Melania Trump and Donald Trump walking hand in hand, holding hands through, Capitol Hill. I want to hear from you in a second, but let's just rewind for a moment and dip in and listen to the conversation between Speaker Ryan and President-elect Trump.
We're going to do some absolutely spectacular things for the American people. We look forward to starting. In fact, truthfully, we can't get started fast enough. And whether it's healthcare or immigration, so many different things. We'll be working on them very rapidly, and I think we'll be putting things up pretty quickly. So we had a very good meeting, a very detailed meeting, and we're going to lower taxes, as you know, and we're going to fix health care and make it more affordable and better. And we're going to do a real job for the public, and that's what we want to do, and that's why we're excited.
Thank you. All right. So Doug Brinkley, I know you have to run, so let me just come back to you. And as we're watching all of these sort of firsts here in Washington, D.C., I know that with regard to transitions, there have been parallels of this transition, the Obama-Trump transition, parallel to perhaps Carter and Reagan, and how when Reagan came in, he yanked all those solar panels right off of the White House, and not much talking between the first ladies in the limo down on Inauguration Day. Is that a fair comparison, or should the country really give Donald Trump more credit than that?
Well, I think Donald Trump's doing a good job today, and Barack Obama. This is not 1980, the way Carter and Reagan just started not getting along. It's very clear for Barack Obama that he is somebody who believes in reconciliation. He is a student of Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King, and he's got to heal the country right now. The wounds are deep. Gerald Ford called his memoir A Time to Heal. Today we are witnessing a healing day, a lesson in civility, and the world is watching. It's not just about what they're whispering to each other right now. It's sending a wide message that the United States is here, that this election's over, and that we're going to have a sense of unity and purpose. We're not Republicans, we're not Democrats today, but we're Americans.
We are Americans. Doug Brinkley, thank you so much as always. We are going to sneak a quick commercial break in, but you really can't turn away from this. I'm Brooke Baldwin here in Washington, D.C. with David Chalian and Dana Bash, walking you through these firsts, both at the White House and on Capitol Hill, with President-elect Donald Trump and his First Lady-to-be here in Washington.
I spy something that starts with M. Mickey!
The 2017 Mitsubishi Outlander, one of America's safest crossovers, well equipped for under $24,000. Get up to $3,000 cash back on select models during the Mitsubishi Motors holiday sales event.
How's yours, Mom? Ask your dad.
Now at Ruby Tuesday for just $12.99, enjoy a favorite entree, 2 sides, endless garden bar, plus your choice of dessert, and some of theirs. 3 courses, just $12.99, only at Ruby Tuesday.
Just like Mom, you have dinner on the table at 6 every night.
Hey guys, I'm home.
Of course, no one said it had to be cooked. Campbell's one-dish recipes, designed around one pan and your schedule. Made for real life.
For lower back pain sufferers, the search for relief often leads here, or here. Today, there's a new option. Introducing drug-free Aleve Direct Therapy, a TENS device with high-intensity power that uses technology once only available in doctors' offices. Its wireless remote lets you control the intensity and helps you get back to things like this, or this, and back to being yourself. Introducing new Aleve Direct Therapy. Find yours in the pain relief aisle.
Attention homeowners. Quicken Loans has some very important information regarding the U.S. government's Home Affordable Refinance Program, or HARP. We've told you about HARP in the past, and we're happy to report that nearly 3 million homeowners have already taken advantage of this fantastic money-saving program. But there are so many more of you who could be saving hundreds of dollars every month on your mortgage. Quicken Loans is here to help you save your money. Why Quicken Loans? The home loan experts at Quicken Loans fully understand the HARP guidelines. We'll work with you to understand your specific circumstances and strive to find the financial solution that's best for you. Then we'll guide you through each step of the mortgage refinance process to make sure that it's both simple and easy. And for 6 years in a row now, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. And for the 3rd year, they also ranked us highest in the nation for mortgage servicing. If you're not familiar with HARP, it's a U.S. government program designed specifically for homeowners who have little or no equity. A great feature of the HARP program is that most HARP refinance loans do not require an appraisal, and there are fewer income verification requirements. That makes it simpler, easier, and even faster. And even if you've been denied for a HARP loan in the past, new guidelines mean that you now may be eligible. Give us a call and we'll give you a Quicken Loans mortgage review. And we'll do all we can to help you save money on your mortgage. It's simple and easy. So find out if you're eligible to take advantage of today's incredibly low interest rates and start saving money every month on your mortgage. Call Quicken Loans today or go to QuickenLoans.com for a mortgage experience that's engineered to amaze.
At Custom Ink, you can create custom t-shirts and other great products for all of life's events. Get free shipping and on-time delivery, guaranteed. Start today at CustomInk.com.
Closed captioning brought to you by Eggland's Best Eggs. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
There's only one egg that just tastes better, with more vitamins and 25% less saturated fat. Only Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Welcome back. You're watching CNN Special Live coverage here from Washington, D.C. It's safe to say there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on today in the White House behind me. We saw those very first pictures of President Obama and President-elect Trump meeting in the Oval Office. There's all kinds of activity just down the road, down Pennsylvania, on Capitol Hill. We've been looking at pictures of President-elect Trump holding hands with his wife, Melania Trump, walking through the Speaker's balcony and really where he will be on Inauguration Day with House Speaker Paul Ryan. We've seen him with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And also, by the way, we are watching and waiting for some winners to join President Obama in the White House momentarily, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Anyone? So this will be President Obama's final hurrah with a winning basketball team. And so we'll take that as soon as we see it. Of course, the interesting note, LeBron James, who was campaigning with Hillary Clinton in Cleveland days ago. What a difference a couple of days makes here. But so we'll take that momentarily at the White House. But Martha Joint Kumar, who is at the White House, who is in charge of the transfer of power and transition between Bush 43 and President Obama. Let me ask you about the First Ladies, because we know Michelle Obama invited Melania Trump into the White House as well today. We heard from Josh Earnest that the two enjoyed a tea and a tour of the private residence, including stepping out on the Truman balcony. What more do you know?
Well, traditionally, one of the things also that happens is the chief usher, who is the person in charge of the residence, Angela Reed, is the current chief usher. There are about 97 people who work on the residence staff. And so usually the chief usher is involved too and meets the First Lady-elect. and discusses with her what kinds of furniture there are that she can draw on. There are 2 briefing books. I don't know if she got them today or that's going to be done later, but there are a couple of briefing books that have pictures of all the items in the collection that are in a warehouse, so that if they wanted to, they could simply choose furniture from that and not have to bring anything into the White House, although I don't think they're going to choose to do that. But that meeting her as well as the First Lady will give her an idea of the staff that she has that will support her. And she would hear from the First Lady how many things that they do for the President and First Lady.
We're also told they talked about just having children in the White House, Barron, little Barron.
That's
but let's
right.
go now to the President and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Welcome to the White House, and give it up for the world champion Cleveland Cavaliers. That's right, I said world champion and Cleveland in the same sentence. That's what we're talking about when we talk about hope and change. We've got a lot of big Cavs fans here in the house, including Ohio's Governor John Kasich and his daughters Emma and Reese. We got some outstanding members of Congress that are here, and obviously we want to recognize Cavs owner Dan Gilbert, who put so much of himself into trying to make sure this thing worked. One of the great general managers of the game, David Griffin. And the pride and joy of Mexico, Missouri, Coach Tyronn Lue. I also, before I go any further, want to give a special thanks to J.R. Smith's shirt for showing up. I wasn't sure if it was going to make an appearance today. I'm glad you came. You're a very nice shirt. Last season, the Cavs were the favorites in the East all along, but the road was anything but stable. And I'm not even talking about what happened on the court. There were rumors about who was getting along with who and why somebody went in a picture. And LeBron's tweeting, and, you know, this was all big news. But somehow Coach Lue comes in, and everything starts getting a little smoother. And they hit their stride in the playoffs. Yeah, everybody can sit down. I'll be here for a while. They start winning. They start winning their first 10 games in the playoffs, setting record after record for three-point shooting. But obviously, what this all comes down to is a team that, for the first time in NBA history, comes back from being down 3-1 in the finals. The first team in history to dig themselves out of a hole like that. And I should add that by knocking off the Warriors, they cemented the 1996 Bulls as the greatest team of all time. So your president thanks you for that. Now, I know. That's funny, isn't it? Yes, it is. See, everybody's happy when their team wins. The comeback was remarkable, and you learn about people when they're down against a historically good Warriors team. Cavs won games 5 and 6 by double digits. You had both LeBron James and Kyrie Irving becoming the first duo ever to score 40 points apiece in a finals game. And then, in Game 7, the Cavs fall behind on the road, only to fight back and lock up the title with an unbelievable 2 minutes. There was the block, what LeBron has said was the defining play of his career. The shot by Kyrie, putting the Cavs up 5. the stop by Kevin Love. Boy, I mean, Kevin was moving. I hadn't seen defense like that. But it wasn't just those outstanding players, not then and not throughout the year, because this was always a team effort. JR always seemed to hit those shots, no, don't shoot that, and then it goes in, and man, that was a great shot. You got Tristan Thompson, who has as great of a motor as anybody, and put in extra work to teach himself how to shoot free throws with the wrong hand. I should have tried that with some bill signings around here. You got Channing Frye, who came in right over the trading deadline and changed the tone of the locker room and his sharp shooting. Richard Jefferson, Dante Jones, providing leadership and giving inspiration to all of us old people that, you can still do something at that age. Iman Shumpert, playing not only great defense and scoring, but also delivered his wife's baby in the bathtub, using a pair of headphones to tie off the umbilical cord. Now that's something right there. That was an all-star move. Got the MacGyver flat top, which we miss. And of course, there's the guy LeBron calls his favorite player of all time, James Jones. The two are a package deal. 6 straight finals appearances. Their names even go together. LeBron James Jones. But the truth is, LeBron wouldn't be LeBron without his teammates. Kyrie, Kevin, Tristan. Michelle's brother, who was an excellent basketball player, always says that you can learn a lot about somebody's character by the way they play basketball. And when you see LeBron James, it is not just his power and his speed and his vertical. It is his unselfishness. It is his work ethic. It is his insistence on always making the right play. It is his determination, all of which makes him one of the great players of all time. And you saw it in those last 3 games. Put up some of the most staggering statistics in finals history. He did it the year before, despite injuries, dragging his team along to make a very competitive series. You saw it when this kid from Akron broke down and fell to his knees when he realized that he had finally fulfilled a promise that he had made all those years ago and delivered that championship back to Northeast Ohio. So this is a player, and this is a team that knows what this title means to Cleveland. This is a city that's, throughout sports history, been through a lot. The fumble, the drive, Jordan over Elo, a whole lot more. But through it all, Cleveland was always believe land, and that's why the Cavs have always given back to their fans and the community that's been so loyal to them. Over the last 22 years, they've given more than $23 million to local charities. And more than just the money, players and coaches have made about 200 visits annually to schools, hospitals, food kitchens, and more, including assisting educational programs that reach more than 100,000 kids in Northeast Ohio. And these Cavs exemplify a growing generation of athletes that are using their platforms to speak out. We've seen Kevin on combating campus sexual assault. LeBron on issues like gun violence and working with Michelle to help more kids go to school, go to college. His foundation is doing something incredible, paying college tuition for 1,100 kids from Akron. I should mention that as we were walking out, Dan Gilbert has been unbelievable in the work he's been doing in Detroit, his hometown, and giving back. And finally, earlier today, the Cavs met with Attorney General Loretta Lynch and my senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, to discuss steps they're taking to help build understanding between law enforcement and the Cleveland community, part of a league-wide effort to build stronger communities all across the country, including holding open conversations so we can begin to bridge divides and diffuse tensions and see each other as one American family. It's really important work. It's just one of a number of recent efforts. We've been proud to partner with the NBA during my time as president, from the league's support of My Brother's Keeper initiative to the mentoring initiatives to Michelle's Let's Move and Joining Forces efforts. The NBA has been a model for positive change, and the fact that it's not just a responsibility of government, it takes all of us, businesses, nonprofits, athletes, role models, working together to achieve the progress that we seek. So I know that Cleveland could not be happier and prouder of having this trophy, but this was already a championship group of guys even before last year, and you should be very proud of them. Give it up for the world champs one last time. Yeah, you want to say anything? Okay.
All right, so we'll stay on the picture, but, you know, you've listened to President Obama. It's been a big day at the White House. First President-elect Trump. Now you have the Cleveland Cavaliers. By the way, I should add, you know, Cleveland couldn't quite eke it out in the World Series. He did invite the Chicago Cubs to come visit the White House before he's out of office. But I've got David Chalian and Dana Bash sitting next to me as we've been listening to all of this and thinking about this day. And you were sort of saying earlier, I mean, you kind of wonder if it was a big morning for the president, to say the least. And
a tough one.
And he probably was really looking forward to this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. We were joking around that this morning it was like he took his medicine and now he gets to eat his dessert.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
This is
He ate his vegetables earlier.
The tough part of the job, one of the toughest, which is that you have to put your personal feelings, your politics aside and respect the office. And the fun part that when you're in the office, you get the Cavs. And you get LeBron to come into the Rose Garden and hang out with them for a little while.
Especially when you're a huge basketball fan.
Exactly.
Like he is.
Exactly.
He really loves this part of the job.
Back, though, on the meetings that we've been watching through the day, whether it was the president and the president-elect in the Oval Office or the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader, something you noted was when you walk, I mean, just even walking around the White House, knowing that President-elect Trump, who's been in many a boardroom, he's shaken hands of celebrities, but to be in that building for almost 2 hours this morning, do you think he appreciated the magic that is the White House?
I think looking at him today, this is a humbling experience for Donald Trump. I think he wears his humility right there in that shot. Just in his body language, the way he's sitting there. He even said that he had respect. He was, for the king of the boardroom, the guy that can run any meeting, run all these businesses.
Close deals.
He is the decider on, across the board in his career, to come into a place where it's not your home turf. When Donald Trump mostly lives on his home turf, is a humbling experience, no doubt. And I think that's clear. And I think that lends itself to the piecing together, the repairing the breach from the campaign. I think that's part of it, too.
You were reporting, because I'm also wondering, 70 or so days until inauguration, and they already are working through, they being the Trump team, the transition team, wanting to get their folks in place, especially the chief of staff.
Right.
What are they working through, and what do you think it will be? Reince Priebus?
All signs are pointing to the chief of staff being Reince Priebus, the
chair of the
RNC chair, who Donald Trump worked with extremely closely, not just during the general election, but obviously during the primary process when Donald Trump was new to the Republican Party, never mind politics.
Right.
And so they do have a close relationship. And Reince Priebus is also somebody who not only understands Washington, most of the people in that building down there, or that way, I guess, the Capitol, he helped get elected since it's a Republican majority. So he has the relationships which, when you're chief of staff, you need. So I don't know 100%. Nobody does. If it's going to be him, it might not be. We might be surprised. But I am told that whomever it is, that is a position that they want to fast track, that they want to do extremely soon. Obviously, the chief of staff doesn't need Senate confirmation, so it's something that he can make happen. He meaning Donald Trump, and then the big 5 cabinet positions: state, defense. Oh my God, I'm having a Rick
Treasury, education. It's okay. It's been a long week.
State defense,
treasury, and justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they want to do within the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
I do think one of the old adages in this town about choosing a chief of staff is sort of finding your best friend that you can trust with everything, the real loyalist to you. That's the one piece that Reince Priebus may not fit.
That's true.
And so, not that he wasn't loyal to Donald Trump throughout the campaign, clearly he was, but he was also sort of negotiating constantly the divide between the party, where there was one between the establishment of the party and Donald Trump, trying to keep all factions happy, as opposed to just being a pure Trump loyalist.
But by the way, you say loyalist, but that person also needs to be able to say no.
Well, you got to
Mr.
be able to
President?
speak truth to power.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. That is true. But I mean that you just are a complete believer in exactly. And so I think that's just the one piece I question. There's no doubt that Reince Priebus proved himself quite a bit, I think, throughout this campaign. I just wonder if maybe Donald Trump is going to dig into the recesses of
might
deeper
be somebody
relationships.
else. Yeah.
On all of that, though, we'll talk coming up here that the making of the President Trump cabinet. This is such an important conversation we know they're having. Will he reward Chris Christie or Rudy Giuliani? We'll talk to a group of Republicans. We'll ask their advice. And happening right now, students staging an anti-Trump protest in Los Angeles. We're watching this very closely here. Live pictures out of L.A. I'm Brooke Baldwin. We're live in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin in Washington, D.C. Let's talk more about this transition of power with the Trump administration, bringing in my political panel. Matt Katz is with us. He's a reporter for WNYC in New Jersey and the author of American Governor Chris Christie's Bridge to Redemption. Also joining me, Randy Evans. He is former counsel to House Speakers both Newt Gingrich and Dennis Hastert. He is also a member of the RNC. And Chris Wilson is the former research and analytics director for the Ted Cruz presidential campaign. So, gentlemen, awesome to have you all on. But Randy, let me ask you first, since we've talked many times, and I know Reince Priebus is on speed dial with you. We were just talking to David Chalian about will he or won't he as far as Trump's chief of staff. We know they want to fill that role like yesterday. Is he the guy? Does he want it? Would he be perfect?
Well, Brooke, let me just say this. There's no doubt that Reince Priebus was the most valuable player on the Trump team. He delivered in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania like no one could have ever expected. He's a trusted confidant of President-elect Trump. He worked with him on the debate prep. He was there with him throughout the end as they made the moves at the end to pull off the Brexit strategy. The real question is, do you want a chief of staff that can reach across the aisle? Now, if you've been the RNC chairman for 6 years, and your job has been to hammer Democrats day in and day out, it wouldn't seem to be the logical choice to be the person to then have the hand reach out across the aisle. On the flip side, certainly a trusted confidant. Certainly on the Republican side, there isn't a member in the Congress that doesn't owe something to Reince Priebus. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a real question for the president-elect about how important is the reach out versus having a confidant who you know will watch your back and protect you all the way through the process.
Okay, I feel like that was a yes or a no, so it's a wait and see. Randy, Chris, what about, we've been hearing of people being floated out. Secretary of State or Attorney General Rudy Giuliani was on TV this morning, and he was saying, well, I know a lot about justice, Not that I'm vying for the job, maybe wink, wink. What do you think about names like Rudy Giuliani and the Trump inner circle versus perhaps more, veteran Republicans who know this town?
Well, you'll know a lot more about the Trump administration once we see the cabinet start to play out. It's interesting, different from the overheated rhetoric of the campaign or the liberal meltdown that's going on right now. Most of the names we see are fairly normal Washington, D.C. style names. I mean, you mentioned Giuliani. I don't think anybody would say he's unqualified to be a justice or maybe attorney general. It'll be interesting. You've got Chris Christie, who headed up the transition process. Does he take the Dick Cheney approach and say, oh, well, I can't find anybody else, so it should be me, in terms of finding the position for him? All the names that are coming out, I think, are fairly standard. I mean, you have a few that are maybe a little bit out of left field, but Stephen Mnuchin, we talked about for Treasury. Well, bringing in somebody from Goldman Sachs isn't exactly some sort of revolution that would go on. So I think from a typical Republican administration, I don't think you'd see, if any of the 16 candidates had won, there's not a lot of difference in the kind of names that we're seeing right now. And I agree with that. Reince Priebus played such a critical role that if he doesn't have his pick, it would really be a shame, because he was able to, what the RNC did for the Trump campaign in terms of the get out the vote operation, what they did in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin is absolutely remarkable, and it's why Donald Trump is president today.
Yeah, well, President-elect.
President-elect today, thank you, sorry.
Soon to be in that house. You mentioned Chris Christie, and so, Matt, I mean, we've talked, you're the guy who's written the book on the New Jersey governor, so let me just ask you, talk about his remarkable political rebound. You have someone who has been the governor of New Jersey, wanted to be president, that didn't happen for him. We know everything that's happened with Bridgegate, especially what's happened in court recently, and now, voila, this is someone who could be in the cabinet here.
It's an amazing return to relevance. On Friday, two of his top aides are convicted in the Bridgegate scandal. A couple days after that, a poll comes out with 19% favorability rating, 1-9 in New Jersey. He goes to vote on Tuesday for the first time since he's been governor. Doesn't tell the press when he's voting, so cameras can be there.
Like under the cloak of darkness in the morning.
Darkness. Yes, under the cloak of darkness at 6 a.m. He goes to vote. 20 hours later, he's on stage with Donald Trump as Trump becomes our president-elect. A really remarkable turnaround, and now I'm told he's being in the mix for 3 or 4 positions. One of those would also be chief of staff, as was mentioned, and the other would be attorney general. I think attorney general would be his ideal job. He was a U.S. attorney in New Jersey. He worked for the Justice Department. On paper, he has the experience. And, he's got a lot of problems with Bridgegate. Some of his top aides are going to prison or supposed to be going to prison. But with a Republican Senate, he shouldn't have to worry as much about the confirmation process. So I think AG would be the gig he wants. I'm not sure if chief of staff necessarily fits his personality as much.
What about, here's my question, Mark, the Trump family, and maybe even more specifically, Jared Kushner. Chris, let me just turn to you. Jared Kushner, this is Ivanka's husband. This is his son-in-law. He was here at the White House when he was when they were meeting with, he wasn't in the Oval Office, but he was walking around the grounds. This is someone who played an instrumental role in the campaign. This is someone who also has zero political experience. Do you think he would want to roll?
For someone who has zero political experience, he probably was the most politically apt person on the inner circle of that campaign. I mean, watching what he did as Senator Cruz got out of the campaign and the outreach that came from Jared Kushner to those of us in the campaign was pretty remarkable. And I think he was probably the best of that group at building bridges and reaching out. And so from that,
why do you think that was? Since you had firsthand experience.
I think it's probably, hopefully, I'd like to say it had something to do with recognition of competency, or maybe, but I think it's just his personality type. I mean, he is somebody who, looking at the family he came from and the success they'd had in business in New Jersey in a tough market. I mean, he kind of grew up building relationships, and so from that, he just knew where to go to build the Trump coalition and find people to come in and kind of help make decisions. And he also, the good thing about, I think, the excellent role that he played was he recognized where they were weak, and he went and found the people who were strong in those areas that were weak and tried to bring them in very quickly. And his role in the White House would be absolutely integral from that, because the one thing that Donald Trump has coming to this is no no experience in political office. Now, some might say that's a benefit, but there's also a lot of knowing what you don't know, and he seems to have a special acumen for that, and I think that's going to be very essential to this White House.
Randy, you get the last question. When you think of some of these politicos that we talked about, Chris Christie or the Rudy Giuliani's, Jeff Sessions of the world, the folks who really took a risk. First it started out with I don't know how many people during the primary cycle, and then finally landed to this one. But they took a risk joining in with Team Trump, and the reward has paid off, has it not?
It has, and the name that I think that the guy left out was Jeff Sessions. He clearly gets the pick of the litter. Here's a guy who is easily confirmed by his colleagues in the U.S. Senate. He was there. He was the first senator to endorse President-elect Trump. He was there with him all the way through, Access Hollywood, past that. I think he's a no-brainer. I think if former Speaker Newt Gingrich wanted something in the administration, he'd be the second one. Remember, he was the runner-up in the vice presidential stakes. He was the one who stood there firm day in and day out. He was one who occasionally would call Trump on the carpet whenever he thought that President-elect Trump had kind of crossed the line. So I think those two really kind of have the pick of the litter if they were interested. I just don't know whether they will be. I had breakfast with Speaker Gingrich this morning. I think he's leaning against going into the administration, but you never know what happens when somebody sits across the table and says, Mr. Speaker, would you like to be the Secretary of State?
When someone says, would you like to be part of the administration, I imagine that'd be a tough something to turn down. Chris and Matt and Randy, thank you all very much on the transition here in Washington. Coming up, Vice President-elect Mike Pence meeting with Vice President Joe Biden any moment now. That's happening there at the White House. Also, just a reminder, what I'm about to show you, this was just 3 weeks ago.
The press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym. That's what I wish.
Did you see where Biden wants to take me to the back of the barn? Me. He wants it. I'd love that. I'd love that. Some things in life you could really love doing.
And we're live here in Washington, D.C. Beautiful pictures. Happy to be here for the week here, overlooking the White House, the Washington Monument. My goodness, what a day, what a week it has been. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Thank you so much for being with me here on this day after Election Day. So much happening in this town today. Donald Trump getting his first up-close look at the presidency. He and his wife, soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump, just met with Republican leaders of the Senate. We just saw him there with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell earlier in the day. The Trumps and Vice President-elect Mike Pence met with House Speaker Paul Ryan. He ushered them out for the balcony for just a view of the city and to walk them through exactly where he'll be for the all-important inauguration. But before President-elect Trump's trip to Capitol Hill came one of the most significant and perhaps most uncomfortable meetings this nation perhaps has seen. Barack Obama and Donald Trump, the president and president-elect, meeting in the Oval Office for 90 minutes, the first step in this great American hallmark, the peaceful transfer of power.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump. It was wide-ranging. We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful. I have been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's wanting to work with my team around many of the issues that this great country faces. And I believe that it is important for all of us, regardless of party and regardless of political preferences, to now come together, work together to deal with the many challenges that we face. And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much, President Obama. This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half, and it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer. We really, we discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Mr. President. Talk about a sacred space there in the Oval Office and how words and body language and tone matters. The world is watching. Let me bring in a number of voices. We can walk through exactly what we've been seeing today in Washington. Karen Tumulty is a national political correspondent for the Washington Post. Mark Preston is here. He's a CNN politics executive editor, and David Catanese is senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report. So great to see all of you. Not a dull moment in this town this week or even today. But just first beginning with Karen, the pictures, the two men sitting there, the president-elect. It is a nation divided. For every person who's bummed out this week, someone is elated. Do you feel hopeful after watching that?
Well, I think the thing that was most heartening is that these two men, the outgoing and incoming president, had their attention exactly where it should be, which is on the continuity of government, on as smooth a transition as possible. President Obama knows that he owes a lot to George W. Bush's team for making that transition as easy as possible for him. And, again, I think that the healing of the differences of the country is something that is going to have to happen. It's going to take a long time. But right now, these two men have something very important and very urgent right in front of them.
I appreciated President-elect Trump saying, I thought this would last 15 minutes, and it lasted some 90 minutes. So that has to be a good sign. I'm wondering, beyond chatting in the Oval, did President Obama give him a tour? Do we know any more about the visit?
Well, we don't have specific details, and I suspect we'll see those in the coming hours.
Yeah.
Probably not as much as we would like. But a couple things. One is, Donald Trump said that he expects to be talking to him several more times before he actually takes office. And you got to wonder what was the conversation. Did President Obama say to him, listen, I understand you want to get rid of Obamacare. Here are some things that could be fixed on Obamacare. Gloria was talking about this last hour, and it's true. Did he say, give him the advice of, don't think you have this mandate where you can go in and absolutely change everything, because if you go in like that, you're going to be a failure. There's no such thing as a mandate anymore in American politics. It's an overused word, and the fact is that, Donald Trump won, and he won decisively, and he should have the respect of the office. But the fact is, here in Washington, D.C., it is a divided government. We are a divided nation. And while they're not always going to agree on things, is that you have to agree on some things.
As we're talking about the president and the president-elect, David Catanese, to you on, we know at some point very shortly, the vice president and the vice president-elect will be having a conversation. And Donald Trump has never spent a day in his life, yes, he's a businessman, but he's never spent a day of his life working in politics, in government. So how integral will Governor Pence, or I should say Vice President-elect Pence, be?
He could go down as the most powerful vice president in history, even a more powerful vice president than Dick Cheney. I mean, Donald Trump won on a populist movement, on people's fears, on change, but he doesn't understand the levers of government, that the way this town works day in and day out. Mike Pence was a House member. He was a governor. He understands the mechanics of government, how you put together a budget. That's going to be a big deal Donald Trump's first budget, presenting that to Congress, Mike Pence can go up there and direct him on who you need to talk to, the committee chairman, the staffers. Pence has those relationships. I think he continued to forge those relationships in the campaign when things were going wayward for Trump. So I just can't underestimate, or overestimate, I should say, how important Pence is going to be to Trump to guide his legislative agenda through.
So in addition to all of that, here we're looking at pictures. Tim Naftali, I know I have you now, where we're watching Speaker Ryan with both Donald Trump and Melania Trump, who, as we watched, walked, holding hands through the halls of Congress, along with Mike Pence, and we saw Senator Mitch McConnell. But Tim, when you look at these pictures, and I think when we were eavesdropping earlier, he was sort of saying, this is where you'll be inaugurated, and this is the view from my office. What do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, it's real. It's going to happen. And President Obama made a decision almost immediately to raise absolutely no doubt.
Forgive me, let me jump away. Ohio Governor John Kasich at the White House.
And frankly, every Sunday in the church where I go, they pray both for the president and for the governor. And I happen to be the governor, but whether I am or not, and when I leave that office, they'll still be praying for the governor. And today I said my prayers on the plane for the success of Donald Trump. And I think as Americans, we all need to come together, because it's the lives of our children, my daughters here, that a president of the United States can really have success. We know there are a lot of people in this country that struggle, a lot of people in this country now who are hopeful that things will be fixed. Well, they won't be fixed overnight, but what we can all do as Americans is join hands, join arms, say a few prayers for the success of the next president of the United States. I want to also compliment the president himself, President Obama, and also Secretary Clinton, who I think were inspirational in the way in which they embraced the outcome of the election. So for those who are in the streets, I just want you to think about the fact that America works best when America is united. America doesn't work best when we are divided. That's been my message, and it will continue to be my message as we move forward in this new time. So, thank you all.
Did you have a chance to meet the president-elect, sir? Okay, let me back up 2 steps, because I know you're thinking, oh, actually, here's Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, forgive me, still on Capitol Hill, walking alongside his wife, the First Lady-to-be. Let's listen.
Well, we have a lot. We're going to look very strongly at immigration. We're looking at border. We're looking very strongly at health care. And we're looking at jobs, big league jobs.
Mr. Trump, do you have to repair some relationships with the process? Are you going to ask Congress to ban Muslims from entering the country?
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, here's what I made out, and hopefully Manu Raju was sitting there and he can hit this precisely. I think I heard something about health care and jobs. Perhaps there was a question on banning Muslims, and that's when President-elect Trump said, thank you, and he walked away. So Tim Naftali, actually, let me just remind all of you, let's back up a step here. Why was Ohio Governor John Kasich at the White House today? Good question. It's because he came with the champions, the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course, their big win a couple of months ago in basketball. And so it's also significant. I mean, this is a man who, within his own state, refused to go to the Republican National Convention because he so did not want to see what is now reality, a president-elect Donald Trump. Tim Naftali, back to you. Just listening to Governor Kasich's words, though, a message that has reverberated through this town from Republicans and Democrats, a message of unity.
Nobody wants a return to 1952 when President-elect Dwight Eisenhower and President Truman didn't talk to each other. After a bitter election campaign, these two men refused to show in their actions the kind of unity the country needed. Clearly, President Obama put aside what personal feelings he must have to move forward with Donald Trump. I wanted to mention one other point. I believe, just by listening to Donald Trump today, that he got an intelligence briefing from the president. He mentioned at one point the capabilities. He stopped himself. He's going to have to learn about how to do that. But I suspect that the president laid out for him the incredible intelligence
that we obviously agree on.
and he's anxious to get going early, and so are we, and it's a first-class meeting. You should talk about reconciliation
with Democrats, Senator McConnell.
So just total transparency. It's tough. We catch some of these quick gaggles. We know reporters are waiting for these, for the president-elect or the Senate Majority Leader to stop by. So we just caught the tail end of that. Sorry, Tim, we're cutting you off constantly, but 'tis live television. What were you saying?
Those people have power. It doesn't matter. Cut me off. My point was, listen to what Trump said. I suspect that the president laid out for him the immense capabilities that the U.S. has in intelligence so that he understood that what he was receiving now, because he's getting a full presidential briefing now, is based on really superb information. I think the president was trying to encourage him to be more empirical and reality-based. I'm guessing at that, but listen again to what Trump said. I believe the president-elect did get an intelligence briefing from the president of the United States today.
I can't confirm that. I know that he could have, starting yesterday, began getting these classified security briefings as he is now officially the president-elect. Karen, just turning to you and watching all of these pictures, watching all of these very powerful men and some women walking around the halls of Congress. Perhaps this is the Trump motorcade and we can catch a glimpse of him hopping in the SUV. But how are you feeling? What are you thinking?
Well, I am going to be just fascinated to see what style of transition this is. We've seen, for instance, President Clinton's transition was very chaotic. He was very anxious he focused a lot on his cabinet because he wanted to send out the symbolic message that his cabinet was going to look like America. In retrospect, he didn't focus enough on his White House staff, so he had a very chaotic first year. By comparison, President Obama did the opposite. They really built the White House staff meticulously during that transition. Donald Trump, as he told us during the campaign, really didn't have much focus on this question. He was too busy trying to win the race. So I think that in the way he manages his transition, we are going to get some hints as to how he's going to approach the presidency.
I know you wanted to jump in on this. Your dark horse pick for the Trump administration, Mark Preston.
Right. So a couple things, right? When we're talking about Donald Trump and his campaign and how small it was, he doesn't have Washington behind him, right? He didn't have his party behind him. Had it been Hillary Clinton who had won, it would have been just a seamless transition. Many people probably would have stayed in similar roles, perhaps not at the cabinet level, but in roles below. But he's going to need people that understand how to work with Capitol Hill. And David talked about how the vice president, he was a leader on Capitol Hill. He was a governor. He understands it. But here's one name to keep in mind. A lot of people don't know who it is. His name is David Urban. Okay, David Urban was Arlen Specter's chief of staff. He went through impeachment with Arlen Specter. He went through the 50-50 Senate, which I know that was a long time ago, but I can tell you, talk about a chaotic time in Washington. And David Urban is well known by the Democrats and liberals, and they trust him. He's also a decorated war hero from Desert Storm and a West Point guy. So when we're talking about who's going to be the chief of staff or who they're going to put in there to actually try to get things done, this is going to be the type of person that they need. And quite frankly, I know the Trumps like him. He won Pennsylvania for him. So let's look at the people that are actually going to be doing the work. Pence, in many ways, as Karen says, let's see how the transition goes. Who from the Republican establishment gets behind Donald Trump now and wants to fill these voids? And this is one of these people I think they're going to be looking at.
All right. Thank you all so much. Coming up next, we will talk about the fear many people across this country are feeling. It is real. It is raw. We will go there hearing from all sides. Plus, the man who helped President George W. Bush transition into the White House joins me live on what is going to happen behind the scenes in preparation for the Trump administration. I'm Brooke Baldwin in Washington, and you're watching CNN Special Live Coverage.
I'm not an angry white old man. I just feel that I've been through, I've been alive for 65 years and I've seen a lot go on. So, and I just thought that there's this may be the first time I've seen something that we can actually change.
A lot of people are kept quiet about a lot of things. As to what the government was doing, they wouldn't open their mouth or say anything about it. They were tired of being pushed too far, and they decided to make a change in their lives and to vote for Donald.
to Donald Trump, voters there explaining why they think he is the man America needs in the White House. A lot of people see him as an agent of change who will usher in a new era here in Washington. But when you talk to other people in this country, they truly fear what President-elect Trump could represent. We have seen the fear manifested in multiple protests across this country, including one actually happening right now in San Francisco. Dan Simon is actually there walking with some of these young demonstrators. Dan, why are they there? What's their message?
Hey, Brooke, we are here on Van Ness Avenue. If you know San Francisco, it is a major thoroughfare. I would say you have approximately 1,000 high school students who have essentially skipped class and have decided to get together and march towards City Hall. Many of these people who are here, they're not even old enough to vote, but as you hear them chant anti-slogans, they are disgusted by what happened in the election. I'm joined here by a couple of the organizers. This is Victoria and Maylee. Victoria, let me start with you. You're a high school senior. What does the Donald Trump presidency mean to you?
It means a lot to me right now because a lot of my family, a lot of my friends are undocumented, and it's not fair. It's really not fair that he said that he will deport every Mexican, every Central American, and he said that basically Mexicans are drug dealers, and that's not true. It's very not true. We are a working class. We struggle in this city, and it's very hard, especially with the house rents and everything else. And so this really means a lot to me right now.
What do you feel you can accomplish by having a rally like this?
Having our voices out here with the public media, having here telling Mayor Esley to help us out, at least something, and basically having our voices out in social medias, in Snapchat and Instagram and all televisions.
All right, Victoria, thank you very much. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. This is a very peaceful protest, Brooke. These are people who just wanted to make their voices heard loud and clear. Some of them told me that when they woke up Wednesday morning, this is a country that they didn't recognize. They feel like strangers in their own country, and they wanted to express their outrage over what happened. And so you're seeing this here on the streets of San Francisco, and of course we saw it last night in a number of cities around the country. And I suspect we'll see it again tonight.
Thank you for that young woman's voice. We are hearing from all sides here in America. Dan Simon, appreciated in San Francisco. Let's have a big conversation about all of this. This is important for everyone. Angela Rye is here, a CNN political commentator and the former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. Steve Cortez, a member of Trump's National Hispanic Advisory Council. Paris Denard, a CNN political commentator and Trump supporter. And Ayman Ismail, who just wrote an article for Slate called "I'm Muslim and I'm Afraid and I Can't Afford to Show It." But Ayman, before I go to you quickly, Angela, was that young woman making you emotional?
Yes. I grew up in a house with an activist, Brooke, and as an African American, I was very privileged to grow up in Seattle, where there really was a Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition. One of my mother's, she's a former college administrator. One of her colleagues was a Native American man who I got to learn firsthand from what it meant to, be a part of a country that took so much from you. And to hear this woman talk about borders that we've established that didn't used to, exist at one point, it's just it's heart-wrenching. I think about the man who drove me home election night and talked about being a Muslim American in this country and saying to me, when I just honestly, now I was sobbing in the car as the results came in, because I was shocked and so disappointed. It wasn't even about Hillary. It wasn't even about partisanship. All the rhetoric that Donald Trump used this campaign that was so anti-American, so the opposite of what this country is supposed to represent. And he said to me, "Is there another pathway? Because I'm Muslim." And I broke down in tears again. It's like, I don't know how to console you in this moment because I don't see a pathway. Now, the Donald Trump that showed up today, perhaps that's who he'll be as the commander-in-chief, and one can only hope. But the fact that we're not sure is, I think, the most dangerous thing, period.
I'm listening to you, and I also just want to make sure I listen to the other side. Steve, you heard that young woman, that young demonstrator with Dan. What did you hear? How would you respond to her?
Well, you know, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I represented the campaign, but since that's done, I wanted to be just clear to the viewers that I'm not representing the transition team now. So I'm just speaking as a supporter of Donald Trump and as a Latino conservative. I would tell you this. I think one thing Trump did in this campaign, and a reason he's so hugely outperformed, by the way, among Latino voters, massive surprise on election night. I think one of the reasons is that he spoke to the American people and said that the media and the left have this twisted. They want to act like people who are here illegally are the victims, and that's simply not the case. The victims are legal Americans, many of them, by the way, Latino themselves, who have to deal on the front lines with the pressures that are brought by so much illegal immigration, particularly wage pressure, because they have to compete with them in the labor market. In some cases, they have to deal with violent people who we refuse to deport because they live in sanctuary cities. And he said, they're not the victims. The American people here are the victims. And by the way, for all Americans, Latinos, people of every color, of every creed, what we need for Muslims, what we need is economic growth. That's why there's so much anxiety and anger out there in the country. I think he tapped into that, but not just exploiting it, offering solutions. This is the way forward. And today, I thought he did a wonderful job of, he and President Obama, two men who have disparaged each other quite a lot in recent months, both of them acting gracious and presidential.
I think, though, so much of this, and I'm listening to you very closely, is just emotion. This is still very raw for a lot of people. For every one person who's elated, the other person is crushed. And Eamon, you wrote this piece in Slate, I'm Muslim and I'm afraid and I can't afford to show it. Explain that to me. Explain how you're feeling.
I just want to say first quickly that I'm not here to complain about my feelings. I do believe that we elected someone who does not understand that his words can have consequences. And just in the past 2 days since he's claimed victory, we've had violent attacks against Muslims on college campuses and other places. In Louisiana, a woman was beaten up by 2 Trump supporters. One of them was wearing a Trump hat. So I do want to separate the emotion bit from the danger bit as well, because this could be very dangerous, and this is what we're actually afraid of. We're afraid of the Trump supporters more than we are of his rhetoric.
So why do you say you're afraid and you can't afford to show it?
The reason why I said that I can't afford to show it is because we need to be strong for each other. At the end of the piece, I came to the conclusion that we can no longer depend on people in positions of power to come and help Muslims and make us feel more comfortable, or to call off people who might resent Muslims and want to act on it. We can't depend on that anymore. We've had, how can we trust someone who spoke to Anderson Cooper on this network and said, I think Islam hates us? And that kind of language is very dangerous, and it puts American lives at risk, Muslim American lives at risk. And we just can't depend on that. We need to depend on each other. We need to be strong for each other.
Paris, let me just turn to you, and we've talked multiple times, and you say this, loud and proud. I'm a African-American man who supports Donald Trump. Can you also appreciate the fears from the young woman or from Angela or the Muslim man who drove her on election day? And you're also not Donald Trump, so you can't respond for him, but what can he say to the country in this precious time to say, I will unify?
Yeah, I think it's important to point out a few things. One, as an African-American Trump supporter, I have had death threats that people have called me out of my name and things that I couldn't even repeat. My mother called me and said, Paris, don't look at your Facebook page, the things that they're putting on there. She goes, it makes me sad. And my mom actually stopped watching some of the network stuff because the responses that come from not Trump supporters, but African-American, mostly Clinton supporters, coming at me because of me being a free person and free thinking. But the other point is this. There are many people on both sides that are Muslim, that are African-American, that are Latino, that are supporting Mr. Trump and who aren't afraid. Many of them are part of the National Diversity Coalition for Mr. Trump. But here's the point that you wanted to make. Are the fears that others have justified? Yes, because you saw a lot of people on support Secretary Clinton that were talking about and I think ratcheting up a lot of the fear and a lot of the tactics and a lot of the words and phrases that were pushed on them to talk about Mr. Trump in a way that I think did not accurately reflect his character and his record. And so are the fears real? Yes, they're real. But do I think that they're valid? No. But the opportunity for Mr. Trump is now. He's not the candidate Trump. He's now the president-elect. Donald Trump. And so he's going to have to show that he's going to make America great again, not just for the people who supported him, but for everyone. When I was in the White House, hold on one second. When I was at the White House, I would tell my colleagues all the time for 4 years, when I was director of Black Outreach, President George W. Bush is the president of all Americans, not just the Black Republicans that support him, but every single one. So we had to have Reverend Sharpton there, Jesse Jackson there, and people who were adamantly opposed to his agenda, but we brought them to the table because we have to find solutions. So this is an opportunity for Mr. Trump to do that, and I think that he will.
Here's the problem with what you're saying. These are Donald Trump's own words. People were afraid because of his rhetoric, because of the ways that he ratcheted up people at his rallies and his events. Perhaps there will be a distinction between candidate Trump and Commander-in-Chief Trump. But the biggest thing that we can rely upon is his record, his decades of years in business, and how he treated employees, how he treated contractors, how he treated the Central Park Five. We don't just continue to talk about the Central Park Five because there were 5 black men, black and brown boys who were a part of this. It's because it's representative of a larger issue. The fact that the CCA, their stock went up yesterday when he was elected, right? Like, we have real issues in this country, and he has to say basically everything I've said for decades and everything I said on the campaign trail I didn't mean. And I think that is the real issue. Steve Cortez, who is on this segment with us, shame on you for invalidating this young woman's feelings, real fears about what it means to be undocumented in this country. Shame on
Angela,
you
I did not,
for calling
I did
a
not,
human being
I did
illegal.
not
Shame on you.
I did not invalidate her. If you are here illegally, you are illegal, okay? If somebody breaks into my house, I don't say they're an undocumented visitor. I say they are a burglar. Words matter, and we have to use words properly.
You're right.
And if you don't respect the immigration laws of the United States, then you don't belong here. And by the way, that's most insulting to legal immigrants, to people like my father, like millions of Latinos and people from all over the world who went through the process to become Americans the right way. And we love immigration. And because we love immigrants, we demand that they must follow our process.
But I think at the end of the day, we are a country of laws, and even the current president of the United States has deported more than
immigration.
The deporter in chief, and so
I just think language matters.
Language matters. Language matters, and I think it was ratcheted up by the when Tim Kaine. I do want to go there. When Tim Kaine went to an HBCU and said Donald Trump represents KKK values.
He was endorsed by a KKK paper.
And so you're telling me there wasn't
David Duke celebrated his election.
Irrelevant, who's totally irrelevant.
No, he got 55,000 votes in Louisiana. That's pretty relevant to me.
He's irrelevant. But the point is, when there are Democrats who are KKK members who supported Secretary Clinton. So to us to make these blanket statements and just assume there's no racist or people who do not ascribe to the Republican Party and values that I do on the other side is emphatically wrong.
And Paris, you know me as your friend, and you know I've never said that there aren't racists on the Democratic Party, but that's a different rabbit hole. And I think the main thing that we have to talk about now is how this commander-in-chief is going to be responsible for the rhetoric on the trail. He had to sit down in the Oval Office today with someone when he questioned their birth in this country and questioned whether or not he went to Harvard. He asked for him to produce his Harvard transcripts. This man owes so many people an apology.
President-elect Trump, you saw him there. He called President Obama a good man. He said they both did. Let that be a symbol for everyone moving ahead, but it's really the weight is in action and in who he chooses as part of the transition and what he says moving forward. Thank you both so much. This is such an important conversation. And Steve and Eamon, thank you as well. Moving on, a couple of months from now, President-elect Trump will fill those key cabinet positions and make that transition to the White House. My next guest knows exactly what that process is like. We'll pick the brain of George W. Bush's former press secretary, Ari Fleischer. Ari joins me live next. Breaking news here on CNN, Aaron Schock, former Illinois congressman, has been indicted for allegedly defrauding the government. A federal grand jury just making the call. An ethics investigation revealed he used taxpayer money to fund lavish trips and events. And according to that indictment, it happened as far as from 2008, actually, to last year. It is a long-held tradition to assure Americans that even the most bitter political rivals can peacefully transfer power from one administration to the next. President-elect Donald Trump met today with President Obama. The very first time these two have ever met happened just today, right there in the Oval Office. President Obama said the conversation was, in a word, excellent. President-elect Trump said they talked about challenges and differences. So let's talk more with someone who has been part of a major transition of power at the White House from the inside, Ari Fleischer. He is a former White House press secretary for George W. Bush. Ari, nice to see you. Congratulations for you and your party.
Thank you.
Let's begin just with, you got it. Let's begin with just the pictures from within the Oval and seeing the president-elect and the president. Conversation that President-elect Trump said would have lasted 15 minutes, lasted a solid 90 minutes. What do you make of all of this?
Well, first and foremost, it's awe-inspiring. You know, believe it or not, I don't know that Donald Trump has ever been inside the White House before. Maybe he was in the mansion for some type of ceremonial function, but to go into the West Wing, to go into the Roosevelt Room, the Cabinet Room, the Oval Office, you know, I had never done that despite being on Capitol Hill for 17 years before I went to the White House with George Bush. It is the most awesome and just inspiring feeling because of what the White House represents for the entire country when you step foot into those hallways and sit in those chairs and occupy those offices.
Probably humbling to anyone walking into that sort of sacred space. In terms of behind the scenes at a meeting like this, Ari, do you think that President Obama would have taken him on a tour, or just a conversation?
I would anticipate just a conversation, although I have no insider information. But if I was Barack Obama, I would recognize this is a unique chance to get in the ear of the next president of the United States and to say to him about a whole series of policies which get short shrift in the campaign. Here are the substantive facts you have to look at. For example, the debt limit, an issue that has forced crisis upon crisis. Here are the implications if we really have another debt limit crisis in 2017. The Iran deal. I know you want to withdraw from the Iran deal, but here's what will happen if you do. A, B, C. This is President Obama's unique opportunity to try to get a couple layers deep into the reality of policy. My hunch is President Obama probably spoke for about 3/4 of the meeting. Donald Trump was a good listener for 25% of the meeting. I think that's what President Obama probably did on issue after issue important to him.
What about cabinet picks, Ari? We know that our reporting is that Team Trump wants to fill that chief of staff spot as soon as possible. They want cabinet officials named as early as 2 weeks from now. If you were advising the president-elect, what would you say about the Chris Christie's and the Rudy Giuliani's of the world for cabinet positions?
Pick outsiders. Look, Donald Trump won because he ran to change Washington. And that is what he has to deliver on. And Donald Trump is not an insider, so he needs a certain mix, a smallish number of people who know Washington and probably know Capitol Hill well. But my advice to him is you've got to deliver on the things you promised you to deliver on, and you need to have an outsider's perspective about Washington. Reinforce that. Surround yourself with people who are outsiders as well.
We know also he can start getting those classified briefings. Barbara Starr over at the Pentagon said that he will be receiving daily intel briefings shortly. Do you remember when President-elect Bush had his first briefing, and do you remember the look on his face when he walked out? Was he overwhelmed at all?
Well, I wouldn't say overwhelmed, but I'll tell you, I do remember, and there's two levels to this. President-elect Trump right now is now receiving what they call the PDB, the Presidential Daily Brief. It's the printed, written document that's given to the President of the United States and an extraordinarily small group of people around the President. But there's another briefing that President Trump is not yet getting and won't get until shortly before the inauguration, and that's an oral briefing, which is a discussion about our covert activities around the world. He is not yet getting that, and there are reports that I heard that he was getting everything President Obama's getting. Not true. He won't get that until shortly before Inauguration Day.
There was a quote, I think you actually retweeted it. It was from September. Peter Thiel in The Atlantic wrote, that's just relevant now. He wrote, "The press takes him, Donald Trump, literally, but not seriously. His supporters take him seriously, but not literally." Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Brooke, you just put your finger on, I think, why the press coverage was so flawed in this race. The press, many of whom are writers culturally, they're literalists. You said this, I will cover what you said. The American people aren't like that. When Donald Trump talked about thousands of people on rooftops in New Jersey celebrating the 9/11 attacks, the press took him to task. There weren't thousands. But the American people largely heard the bigger point Trump was making, that some people in the United States celebrated the attack. Whether the number was 303 or 3,000. And this is a huge
But Ari,
difference.
words
The press
matter.
took
I
them
mean, when you
literally.
say, you gave that as an example, but building a wall, banning Muslims,
I know, Brooke,
words
but,
matter.
But Brooke, but again, you're separating what the media does for a living from how the public interprets public events. The press is literalists, and I get that is the job of the press, but don't miss the bigger story at the same time. And so Trump was wrong on certain facts, but he was right around the bigger truths. And that's what the American people heard. And this is why so many reporters, I think, have a cultural disdain for Donald Trump, while so many of the American people have a cultural disdain for the media. And people have got to figure this out. The media has to figure it out, because it's vital that the media is accurate and is relevant in people's lives and not dismissed in people's lives. Trump figured that out. Media needs to figure it out too.
Well, I keep saying it, and I'll say it again. We all just really need to listen. We need to listen to one another moving forward. Ari, thank you. Always a pleasure. Ari Fleischer coming up. Ari, actually, I should mention, this is a short time from now, Donald Trump's lawyers are due in court for a hearing in a lawsuit against Trump University. We will show you the CNN interview they are fighting to keep out of evidence. Just a short while ago here in Washington, House Speaker Paul Ryan refused to share a stage with Donald Trump after Trump's lewd comments were revealed on that hot mic tape. That was a while ago. Today, the two met as partners in a Republican-controlled government in just a matter of weeks. With me now, Doug Heye, CNN political commentator, Republican strategist, former RNC communications director, spent a decade on the Hill with the Senate and the House, and Ben Ferguson, CNN political commentator and conservative radio talk show host. So, guys, good to see both of you, and let me just turn to you with all your years on the Hill. First, just talking about Speaker Ryan, and it was just amazing looking at the pictures of him on his balcony showing President-elect Trump and Melania. And I guess my point is just what a difference days have made.
Absolutely.
Right? Between him not even saying his name when he voted to this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you used the perfect word, which is partnership. And if you look at what Paul Ryan has said today and at his press conference yesterday, I'd also use the word eager. He's eager to enact conservative legislation and has the opportunity to do so now, which in divided government, obviously we've seen 6 years of a very tough gridlock, but Washington now will be able to do big things, not just Obamacare, obviously, which we know is a big issue, but also tax reform, which wasn't going to happen in divided government. And then the little things like having an appropriations process that actually works. That's a big difference from where we are today to where we'll be come January.
Here's what I'm wondering, Ben Ferguson, and let me just throw this at you. You have a Speaker Ryan who loves to crunch numbers and is this policy wonk. And then you have Donald Trump, who has never served a day in political office, but he is the guy who closes a deal. What do you think that relationship will look like?
I think it's actually going to work really well for two reasons. One, Donald Trump is more of a big idea kind of guy, and I think he'll say, look, this is my big idea. This is what I want to do. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty of this, knock yourself out and let's get this deal done, and I'll come in and help you close it. I also think that they have a lot of common denominators that bring them together automatically. They may not have agreed with each other during the campaign or even the style, but right now they both have things they can agree on. I think you got the debt ceiling coming up, and they're going to probably deal with that sooner than later so it doesn't become an issue. Obviously, Obamacare. And then you've got things like the Supreme Court. So I think you'll see this be actually a really good marriage, because Donald Trump's not going to want to micromanage everything on the Hill. If he can find an ally in Paul Ryan, let him do those things. I think the American voters are going to be shocked how many things can actually get done in Congress.
I love to hear that, and I think that's so positive. But Doug, let me ask you, because not only is not this country feeling kumbaya this week between Dems and Republicans, I mean, within Republicans, there are a lot of Republicans just down the street here who did not support Donald Trump. So what do you think, what potential fights could break out even just within the Republican Party on Capitol Hill?
Well, look, obviously Capitol Hill's been divided. I lived through some of those wars, have a lot of scars still from that.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity for Republicans to come together. And one of the things that Paul Ryan did that was significant wasn't just that he crisscrossed the country campaigning for Republican members. He was also promoting a legislative agenda that he called a better way. That's the blueprint for what the House can do, obviously what the Senate can do well.
But what could be the biggest difference?
The biggest difference is, one is turf wars. If you look at the first 2 years of the Obama presidency, the House often fought with the Senate. The House and Senate often fought with the White House. Those turf wars are going to happen. They're inevitable. But this is also why we talked about earlier in the show the Chief of Staff and Secretary of Defense in those positions. One of the problems that the Obama White House had, not just was its attitude towards Congress, but a legislative shop that really wasn't interested or known on Capitol Hill. That's going to be one of the real important places for Obama, is to appoint a legislative director that's going to work hand in glove with House and Senate Republicans.
And also, I think we just have to point out, someone else said it on the show, that Mike Pence could be really the most powerful vice president, as he served obviously as governor and in House leadership, and now will be the vice president of this country. Doug and Ben, thank you so much. I'm out of time. I got to go. But as Donald Trump, as President-elect Trump and his budding administration focus on plotting out the transition into power here, there is one glaring distraction for the president-elect. On the Monday after Thanksgiving, a trial is set to begin in San Diego in a class action lawsuit against Trump University. Trump could be called as a witness by both sides. The suit alleges Trump misled and defrauded students enrolled in his real estate program, and today there is a hearing to decide what type of evidence each side can present. So, to Drew Griffin we go, our investigative correspondent. What can we expect from that, Drew?
Well, we can expect the president-elect trying to defend himself in not one, but 3 lawsuits coming up here. There have already been some pretty big developments in advance of this hearing, which takes place in about a half hour. I think one of the biggest, Brooke, is the judge seems poised to eliminate one of the biggest defenses of Trump's university, one that we've heard so many times, especially on the campaign trail, that the student evaluations in which Trump claims 98% of students were happy with the seminars they were attending, judge ruling earlier today that that is irrelevant to the case. He is planning not to allow it. What the judge may allow is everything else Trump said on the campaign trail, including tweets, statements, and Brooke, maybe even that flare-up in which he criticized the very judge himself for being of Mexican heritage. Judge Gonzalo Curiel says in a preliminary ruling he's inclined to allow that evidence into trial, but he's also allowing Trump's attorneys to continue to fight. Brooke?
One of your stories, I know, is your actual story here on CNN, part of the evidence in this case.
Yeah, the plaintiffs wanted to get in. It's a candid and honest interview we did with one of Trump University's top instructors. His name is James Harris. The plaintiffs say they can't find him to drag him into court, so they wanted to play our story instead. Here it is, James Harris trying to answer questions about his real estate expertise. Do you remember when you said this? I'm a former licensed agent broker. At 29, I became the top 1% broker in the country. I build homes in Atlanta, Georgia, and I used to live in Beverly Hills.
Yes. If I said those things, they are true. I did live in Beverly Hills, and I
We have no record of you ever living in Beverly Hills.
Okay, well.
We can't find your broker's license anywhere.
Okay.
And I have no idea what homes you built in Atlanta, Georgia. You build homes in Georgia?
I'm not prepared to answer those questions today.
Brooke, you can see why the plaintiffs wanted to use that, and especially wanted to get that guy into court, and perhaps why nobody can find him. The judge says, you know, that playing that tape is basically hearsay. I think is correct on this. He plans to deny the motion to play that tape, says he wants to know more about where James Harris is and why the attorneys can't actually get him into court so they can question him himself.
All right, Drew, thank you on those 3 cases. You'll be following it. You're watching CNN Special Live coverage here in Washington. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Back in a moment.
President-elect Donald Trump meeting with the guy he once called the founder of ISIS. The lead starts right now. President-elect Donald Trump meeting hours ago with President Barack Obama. I think it's fair to say the respect they have for one another knows bounds. What was said inside that Oval Office? Trump now tasked with building an administration that could decide the way forward for this country. Where could RNC Chairman Reince Priebus land? We'll ask him live. Plus, after months of allegedly messing with our democracy, does Vladimir Putin see a partner or a puppet in our new president? The signs that Moscow may want to hit the reset button again. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. 71 days. That's how long President-elect Donald Trump and his team have to prepare to run the biggest government and biggest military in existence. Step one happened this afternoon. The president-elect met with President Barack Obama, their first ever meeting in the Oval Office. Before, from afar, both men had lustily attacked one another. Trump, former birther-in-chief, having led the charge, falsely questioning whether the first African-American president had been born in Africa. For his part, President Obama taking to the campaign trail, repeatedly insisting that Donald Trump was temperamentally unfit to be president. But today, as a testament to the peaceful transition of power we have in this nation, both men shook hands. They said nice things. Both men trying to speak to a fraught nation, eager to hear some reassuring words. President Obama said if President-elect Trump succeeds, then the nation succeeds. President-elect Trump saying he would be seeking the counsel of President Obama. Jim Acosta is at the White House. And Jim, what do your sources say that the tone was of the actual 90-minute meeting between these two? Was it as sunny as presented to the public?
It appears that way, Jake. While people here at the White House are very clear, they have not changed their views on Donald Trump. Senior administration officials from the president on down say they are devoting their final weeks here in office to ensuring a smooth transfer of power to the incoming Trump administration. And that was very much the spirit of the day in this first face-to-face meeting between the president and president-elect. It was an image designed to calm a nervous world. The president and the president-elect, fresh off the political battlefield, sitting together in the Oval Office, calling on a divided nation to come together.
And most of all, I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds. Please.
Following his 90-minute meeting with President Obama, Donald Trump offered his own display of restraint and respect.
I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel. He explained some of the difficulties, some of the high-flying assets, and some of the really great things that have been achieved. So, Mr. President, it was a great honor being with you, and I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
And as reporters were ushered out of the room, Trump added one more compliment for the president.
Very good man.
And even got a little advice from the president.
Here's a good rule. Don't answer questions when they just start.
It's always the last one.
Away from the news cameras, First Lady Michelle Obama and soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump met in private as two key transition figures, White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough and Trump's son-in-law and top aide Jared Kushner, went for a long stroll on the South Lawn. It was all a far cry from the down-and-dirty campaign that just wrapped up earlier this week.
If his closest advisors don't trust him to tweet, why would any of us trust him with the nuclear codes?
Mr. Obama argued Trump was unfit for the White House only weeks after the GOP nominee finally conceded the president was an American citizen.
President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
Their last encounter face-to-face came when the president mocked the idea of a Trump administration 5 years ago.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump. He certainly would bring some change to the White House. Let's see what we've got up there.
Oh, you guys are right there.
The president-elect also stopped by the Capitol, where House Speaker Paul Ryan gave him the view from the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, where he also met Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to start plotting the GOP agenda. Trump's stunning rise to power has sent shockwaves around the world, sparking protests in cities across the U.S.
Not my president, not today!
Top Trump advisors like New Jersey Governor Chris Christie are trying to lower the temperature, suggesting the new president will not seek to imprison Hillary Clinton, as he suggested during the campaign.
Politics are over now. People have spoken. Time to move to uniting the country.
Though Rudy Giuliani made it clear Trump is determined to carry out his plans, including that wall on the Mexican border.
The wall is going to take a while. I'm sure he's going to build it. It's a campaign promise.
Now, there are other signs, Jake, that this transition is a work in progress. Vice President Joe Biden just wrapped up a meeting with the Vice President-elect Mike Pence a little while ago here at the White House, and I'm told by one key transition official that the transition office space has been building up for several months now. There will be office space, of course, here in Washington, but they'll be maintaining transition office space in both New York and Indianapolis. And one other final note to point out, Jake, one of Donald Trump's former foes, John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, was here at the White House earlier this afternoon. He was here because the Cleveland Cavaliers were celebrating their big NBA Finals victory with President Obama. John Kasich, even though he didn't attend Donald Trump's convention and didn't vote for him in the November election, did say that he is offering his prayers to the incoming president-elect. Jake?
Jim Acosta at the White House for us. Thank you so much. Joining me now, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. First of all, Mr. Priebus, congratulations. I know the RNC had a lot to do with the ground game for Mr. Trump, a huge victory for you.
Well, we appreciate that, and the most important thing is having a great candidate and someone that the electorate believed in. They believed in the authenticity and the genuineness of President-elect Trump. That's where it starts, and then, you know, being good at the small stuff and the mechanics is part of the equation, and certainly the team at the RNC, along with the Trump campaign, delivered in a way that I think shocked a lot of people.
Indeed. President-elect Trump obviously met with President Obama this morning. What can you tell us about the meeting, what they actually talked about for an hour and a half?
Oh, I can't tell you much about it. I met with President-elect Trump for a little bit, but I didn't get the details about what that meeting, what happened there. But it was everything anecdotally that I've heard. It was a fantastic meeting, very cordial. Same with the meeting after that with Speaker Ryan. And everyone is just, you know, slowly building out what the operation is going to look at moving forward. And I hope that everyone has seen sort of this presidential Donald Trump that we knew all along was up to the task, and I think he's going to make us all proud.
Speaking about moving forward, there's a lot of talk about who he might staff in his administration. There's a lot of discussion about what role you might play as somebody who understands Washington, D.C. and how this town functions, somebody who has an excellent relationship with Speaker Paul Ryan. I know you're not going to answer my question if I ask you if there's been any conversation about what job you might take, but let me put it this way.
You already know.
What job do you think might be... Well, what job do you think might be best suited for someone of your talents beyond chairman of the RNC?
You know, I don't know, Jake. I mean, you're clever to ask the question that way through the side door instead of the front door. But look, it's really not an issue. I mean, honestly, it just isn't. I mean, right now, basically, most of us have had 2 hours of sleep in 4 days. I think people are taking a breath, getting some of the details figured out. There's just these transition teams, as you know, have been working for months and months and months. And so slowly but surely, I think those details will come out. But certainly, we're proud of what had happened. We're proud of where we took the party and how far we've come. But most importantly, we're proud of who will be our next president, Donald Trump.
So let me ask you a question. This is a time, obviously, for unifying the nation. There are millions of Americans out there, Latinos, African Americans, immigrants, Muslims, Jews, women, people with disabilities, millions of Americans who are scared, frankly, about what a Trump presidency might mean to them because of the rhetoric of some of his supporters, some, not all, some, and because of some of the things he said. Do you think, in order to heal this nation after this wrenching process, that President-elect Trump should take this issue head on, reach out and address individuals who might actually be scared in their own country?
Well, I think, obviously, I maybe disagree with the characterization that you laid on the table here, but if you look at Donald Trump's first speech after knowing that he was going to be president-elect of the United States, you saw at 2:30 in the morning, this is a person who gave a conciliatory, measured, very appropriate, I think extremely impressive speech about coming together, building bridges. There was no bragging, there was no relitigating issues from the campaign trail, and he did that. That was President-elect Trump's decision to do that. It wasn't a speechwriter that decided, here's the speech you need to give. He looked at the speech and said, no, we are gonna bring this country together, and we want to tell the whole world that this is going to be America for all Americans. I'm going to be a president for all Americans, all races, all religions, whatever the background. He is going to be the president.
I mean,
for
that's
them.
all we're going to. So that one speech at 2:30 in the morning is all that's necessary. I know you're not going to take my word for it, but I can tell you, according to polls, and first of all, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. So there are more people who wanted her to be president than wanted him to be president. That said,
yeah, but let me tell you
the
something
rules.
about that.
There
Jake.
are, yeah.
Well, let me tell you something about that. I mean, what we have going on in America, though, is you have an election in about 12 states, okay? And every year, unfortunately, the map of states gets smaller and smaller. It just so happened that Hillary Clinton forgot about a few states as well, and Donald Trump was very popular in places that she didn't expect, and he ran the table in the Midwest. But we don't have an election anymore in California or New York, okay? So that's why the Electoral College matters. And Donald Trump had the most
I'm not saying it doesn't, and obviously
American
this was a huge
political
success.
victory that we've had in ages. Right.
Absolutely.
So
I'm not taking away anything from that. My only point is that they're...
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday morning, he gave a speech. Okay? It's Thursday afternoon. I'm not sure if you were expecting him to give daily speeches, but he had given the speech and to unify this country, and I'm certain that what's in his heart is to continue reminding America that he wants to be a president for everyone in this country, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, that he wants to lead and he wants to make them proud, but he also wants to do the will of the voters that decided on Tuesday night that Donald Trump should be president of the United States.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you, though, about the whole mandate issue, because obviously he did have an electoral win that was solid, and you're right, he swept a number of important battleground states the Democrats take for granted. How much of a mandate do you think you have in terms of how Republican you think the country is and the direction that Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, should take the country, given the fact that it is such a divided country and the popular vote did go to the other candidate?
Well, I mean, the Democrats are completely out of power. I mean, politics is a game of winning and losing, but it's also a game of bridge building and leading and doing the right thing of our country. So you always have to balance out all of those factors when leading forward. But I would say that the goal now is to accomplish the plan that Donald Trump has laid on the table. The American people saw the plans of both candidates. They chose Donald Trump. They chose a majority in the House. They chose a majority in the Senate, when many people thought that we were going to lose everything. So now we owe it to the American people to follow through on all of our promises, which will be the things that we talked about. So it would be improper for us to win the election, make the promises and say, well, even though we won everything, why don't we just back off on everything that we promised? No, that's not the way it works. We are going to execute a plan and an agenda, and that plan is going to be the one that we campaigned on.
All right, Chairman Priebus, thank you so much. Once again, congratulations on the hard-fought victory.
Thank you, sir.
He's not happy with the presidential results, but does Democratic Senator Al Franken agree with President-elect Trump on anything? Can they find common ground? I'll ask him next. Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Sticking with our politics lead, there will be few checks on President Trump. Under a Trump administration, Republicans will also control the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. This afternoon, the president-elect and his vice president met with GOP congressional leaders to discuss the coming agenda. So what can we expect from President-elect Trump's or President Trump's first 100 days in office? Manu Raju is on Capitol Hill right now for us. Manu, Trump has vowed to repeal Obamacare. Is it likely to happen, and how quickly could he get that done?
Well, Jake, he can certainly gut core aspects of the health care law because of Senate budget rules that actually allow for key aspects of that law to be overhauled, to be repealed, or to be killed by just 51 votes. And remember, Republicans will probably control 52 seats in the new Congress. So that means they could get rid of things such as the taxes in Obamacare, subsidies, that gigantic Medicaid expansion, all could be on the chopping block. But because of Senate procedures, other aspects of the law will not be under a 51-vote threshold. They'll have to overcome a filibuster 60-vote threshold to kill other aspects of the law, including those state-based insurance exchanges, as well as ensuring that people who have pre-existing conditions will not be denied health care coverage, and ensuring that kids up until the age of 26 can stay on their health care plans. In addition, Jake, the Republicans will need 60 votes to pass a replacement bill, and as we know, that's very hard to do over such a polarizing issue. They're going to need Democratic support. Not an easy task, Jake.
All right, Manu Raju, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Democratic Senator Al Franken of Minnesota. Senator Franken, thanks for being here, and I suppose condolences.
Well, yeah, I worked very hard for Hillary, went around the country for her, thought that she was most qualified to be president, but we've had the election. The people have spoken, and I'm a senator and got a lot of work ahead of us.
I want to ask about the results, and then we can move on to what you're going to be doing in the future with this new president. But Donald Trump almost won your home state of Minnesota. He didn't, but it was very close. And Minnesota, obviously, a Democratic stronghold. He won Wisconsin and Iowa and Ohio and Pennsylvania. He's leading in Michigan, which hasn't been called yet. Why do you think Democrats did not turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton in the numbers you needed?
Well, I kind of want to leave that to pundits and others, but I'd say that there obviously is a feeling among a lot of people that the country hasn't been working for them, and that they wanted to try something new, and we got him. We got Donald Trump, and I'm concerned about a lot of the issues that he talked about in a way that on immigration, I don't want to see mass deportation, on climate, I think that's very real. I think most Americans know that that's real and it's man-made, and there's a reason that sea level's going up. The Affordable Care Act, he said he was going to repeal and replace it. He said he'd do that on day one, but you have to replace it with something, and I haven't heard anything really about what that would be.
Let me ask you this, Senator,
sure
on that subject of Obamacare, because one of my relatives in Minnesota, a constituent of yours, who voted for Obama 4 years ago, she saw her health premiums skyrocket. I know it's a real problem in Minnesota. As a result, she voted for Trump. How much do you think Obamacare might have ultimately hurt Hillary Clinton?
I think that hurt. I think a number of things hurt. Look, that is about the exchanges. So your relative is probably getting her health care through the exchanges, and this is something that people have a right to be mad about. But the people they should be mad at really are Republican office holders who refuse to do anything other than vote to repeal the ACA. Refused to, made it more difficult for insurance companies to be in the market by, this gets down to the weeds, but the risk corridors, they basically did everything to undermine them. Now we're going to get into a little bit of the weeds of health care, and I hope that President-elect Trump, informs himself about how health care works in this country. We need to, if we're going to repeal and replace, we need to replace it with something that doesn't take health care away or insurance away from 20 million people, that doesn't take it away from people who have pre-existing conditions.
So let's talk about what you can work on with Donald Trump. Obviously, you'll be fighting to preserve health care for those 20 million Americans who got it through the Medicaid expansion. What are some issues, moving away from health care, where you think you might be able to work with Donald Trump? It seems to me you oppose the Pacific trade deal that seems to be dead for all intents and purposes now. It seems to me there might be some overlap between the views of progressive senators like yourself and Donald Trump when it comes to issues like trade.
Yeah, here's one, infrastructure. He has talked about spending a lot on American infrastructure, and I agree with him completely on that. And that includes not just roads and bridges, but broadband, rail, schools. This is something that we should be doing, and I think that I may be more in line with the president-elect than some of my colleagues on the Republican side in the Senate and in the House.
There's going to be obviously a postmortem done by Democrats. Do you think Bernie Sanders, because of his appeal to working class voters and young people, do you think he could have beaten Donald Trump?
I don't know. I'm not a pundit. We are where we are. There'll be discussions within the Democratic Party on where we go from here. I think that the Republican Party now has gone through an incredible change, and I think they're going to have some postmortems too when figuring out where they are. We're in the middle of a big change, and I think it affects everybody.
Senator Al Franken, Democrat of Minnesota, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Jake Tapper, Washington, D.C.
She spent the past 18 months getting to know and understand Trump supporters. What one journalist saw that so many others missed. Next. Welcome back to The Lead. More than 59 million Americans voted for President-elect Donald Trump. Democrats today are trying to understand what drove these individuals, especially those in normally Democratic-leaning states, to the polls. States that have not gone for a Republican for president since the 1980s, like Wisconsin or the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I want to bring in Selena Zito. She's a national political reporter who writes for the Washington Examiner, the Atlantic, and the New York Post. And Selena, it's so great to see you again. You have been covering these Trump voters for months and months. Most polls before Tuesday signaled a Clinton win, but you were hip to this long before the reality of the election results came in. At what point in the race did you feel that maybe the polls and the pundits had it all wrong?
Well, I first got the feeling that this would go for Trump right before the convention. In my drive from Pittsburgh to Cleveland, I saw counties which had never voted for a Republican, let alone put signs up for Republican, have all of these homemade, not even professional signs, homemade signs, or the house side of their house was painted, and I even saw someone who had painted their horse with Trump on the side. And I thought, wow, this is, completely different. We're talking about the Mahoning Valley in Ohio, which used to be the Great Steel Valley up until the 70s, and the like Erie County in Pennsylvania, which is never, since Herbert Hoover hasn't voted for a Republican. And then after the convention,
what do you think the appeal was? What do you think the appeal was? Why were they so drawn to his message? Republicans have tried to get those voters for a long time.
Well, he had a non-ideological campaign and message. He offered voters a tangible benefit. This was a change election. People have been building up to this. You saw it in the wave election cycles in 2006, 2010, 2014, in the midterm elections. So people were unhappy. They kept switching back and forth between Democrat and Republican. They've been sending us a message for a while. But he offered that tangible benefit. He said, "Make America great again." And while people made fun of that actually meant something to these voters. And what Hillary's problem is that she ran on her resume, which ended up just being about the past. And people wanted to move forward. And that is probably the most key thing that these voters liked about him. And it's not, these voters, it's not just the poor voter. It's not just the one that's been economically impacted by trade or technology. It's also the upper middle class and middle class voter who feels a sense of loss of power. Not power in the way that we look at it, in a boardroom or in Washington, but power in that their lifestyle is going to be different for their children and their grandchildren. These are people that are not mobile.
And one thing,
yeah.
One thing that you said that was so interesting is Hillary Clinton's ad strategy was to focus on outrageous things that Donald Trump has said. And she kind of ceded the populist argument to Donald Trump.
Yes.
You say that the media took Donald Trump literally but not seriously, while Trump supporters took him seriously but not literally. Explain.
Well, you know, I straddle two worlds, right? I'm out there. I live in Pittsburgh. It's right there on the border with Ohio and Pennsylvania, and you know, and I watched voters and I listened to voters, and you know, and when he would say something outrageous, they didn't take it the way we did. You know, as reporters, we're like, he says something, we're going to ban all Muslims. Well, we're going to fact check that and see if that's something you can actually do. They look at it as like, you know, he doesn't really mean that. He just means he wants to keep the bad guys out. And they didn't take everything that they said in the most literal terms. And I think that was sort of the disconnect between us as reporters and the voters. They kept trying to tell us those things. He doesn't mean those things in the way you see them, in the way you hear them.
Fascinating stuff. I advise everybody interested in finding out more about this phenomenon, perhaps people on the coasts of the big cities confused about how this happened. Google Selena Zito, read her writing. Very interesting stuff. Selena, always good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Could President Obama's own words be the reason Donald Trump ran for president and is now replacing him? That story next. Welcome back to The Lead. We're going to stay with politics now, and we have this breaking news. CNN's Dana Bash just got this news in. A source telling her that President-elect Trump wants Steve Bannon, the executive from Breitbart News, to be his chief of staff. Others apparently in the Trump orbit are trying to talk Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, out of Steve Bannon. That source stressing that one of the most important skills for the chief of staff is the ability to keep the trains moving. And some in the Trump orbit do not think Bannon would be the best person to do that. Obviously, President-elect Trump might disagree. With me to discuss this extraordinary political day, my political panel, we have with us Simone Sanders, Anna Navarro, and Kayleigh McEnany. Obviously, we all want the nation to succeed. What do you think about the Steve Bannon pick, if that's actually what's going to happen?
Do you have a match somewhere so that I could set my hair on fire? Look, I think that
you don't approve, is I'm guessing what that is. What that.
I don't approve, and I suspect a lot of Republicans in Congress don't approve. I think it's a very important first step. It's a first sign of what kind of president Donald Trump is going to be when he takes over. And the chief of staff job is incredibly important. It sets the tone. It really is.
What's wrong with Mr. Bannon?
Do you know Steve Bannon? Have you read about Steve Bannon? What's wrong with him? Okay, he is polarizing. He has been incredibly critical of so many Republicans, even in Congress. He has led Breitbart News, which has been savage on folks, and I think it sends the message that he's not going to be a unifying president. It is his choice. Right? Chief of staff, White House staff don't have to go through confirmation. It is absolutely the president's choice. But if he chooses somebody of that ilk, I think he's sending a very strong message that no, he's not going to be conciliatory. No, he's not going to work in cooperation with Congress. No, he's not going to try to unify this country. No, he's not going to represent everybody. And I think it's going to put the fear that's already out there in, just increase it exponentially.
What do you think, Kayleigh?
Look, we don't know who President-elect Trump will pick. That being said, I think Steve Bannon and Breitbart were on the forefront of this movement. They saw the movement of the people rising up against the government really before anyone. So if he chooses Steve Bannon, it shows he's going to stick to his roots. That being said, there's great value in people like Kellyanne Conway and Reince Priebus, who do know the traditional mechanisms of working with Congress and have that skill. So I trust President-elect Trump. He put together the team that got him to the White House against all odds, and I trust he'll pick the right person.
It might not be a surprise to anybody, but I don't trust President-elect Trump, and I'm in mourning because we're about to put the alt-right in the White House. To have Steve Bannon, who gave, not only led the uprising, they did, I will say, Breitbart did identify some of this economic anxiety, but they also identified some of this white supremacy, some of this racism, some of this xenophobia, this sexism, and to put Steve Bannon...
You're forgetting anti-Semitism.
Oh, yes, anti-Semitism, that was right up there at the top. So to put that as the chief of staff in the White House, the people's house, I just can't.
I will tell you, though, some of the other names that we've heard, like Reince Priebus, would send a very positive message. Reince Priebus is a guy who led the Republican post-mortem, who wanted to see a more inclusive Republican Party, who is very good friends with Paul Ryan, who's very good friends with Mike Pence, who has got incredible relationships with everybody in Congress, and who doesn't scare the bejesus out of us.
So speaking of scaring the bejesus, I want to bring in some video from Royal Oak, Michigan Middle School, or a Royal Oak, Michigan Middle School, and let's play that, and I will get the panel's reaction.